When the alpha you rejected claims you in front of the entire pack, but you're pregnant with another man's child. Tonight, Sable Ardent's world ends in front of 200 wolves. Her fiancé announces his fated mate, a human girl who can barely stand. The pack erupts. Sable stands there, scentless, silent, carrying a secret that could destroy them all. Then Kael Thornridge, the alpha everyone fears, steps forward and says 4 words that freeze the room. She belongs to me. This isn't a rescue, it's a claim. And Sable, broken and desperate, has no choice but to accept. Stay until the end to see what happens when she realizes the truth. Like and comment your city below.
Bye-bye.
The great hall stank of sweat and triumph, and the iron bite of shift magic crackling through 200 wolves packed shoulder to shoulder. Sable Ardent stood at the edge of the crowd, her fingers white-knuckled around the frayed hem of her dress, and told herself to breathe. Just breathe. The chandeliers overhead burned too bright, throwing harsh shadows across the stone floor. And the noise, goddess, the noise, was a living thing, voices layered over voices, laughter sharp as broken glass. She didn't belong here, she knew it, they knew it. But Bren had insisted. "You're my mate," he'd said that morning, his hand warm against her cheek, his smile easy and sure. "You belong at my side tonight. Always. Always." The word had tasted like honey then, now it tasted like ash. Sable pressed her palm against her stomach, flat still, thank the goddess, nothing showing yet, and scanned the room for him. Bren Halvik, her fiancé, the man who'd promised her forever 3 months ago under the full moon, who'd kissed her like she was something precious, who'd made her believe that maybe, just maybe, being scentless didn't mean being worthless. She spotted him near the dais, his broad shoulders cutting through the crowd, his dark hair catching the light. He was laughing at something, head thrown back, and her chest loosened just a fraction. "See? He's fine. Everything's fine." Then he turned, and she saw the girl, small, pale, human, dressed in something soft and white that made her look like a ghost or a sacrifice, her blonde hair falling in waves over thin shoulders. She stood next to Bren, so close their arms brushed, and she was looking up at him with wide, wet eyes, like he'd just pulled the moon from the sky and handed it to her. Sable's stomach dropped. "Who the hell is that?" The voice came from her left. Mira, one of the younger she-wolves, all sharp teeth and sharper tongue. She didn't bother lowering her voice. "Is that a human? Why is Bren touching a human?" "Maybe she's dinner," someone else muttered, and a ripple of laughter spread through the nearest wolves. Sable didn't laugh. She couldn't. Because Bren wasn't just touching the girl. He was holding her hand, gently, reverently, like she might break. The hall began to quiet. Not all at once. More like a slow bleed, voices dropping off in waves as heads turned toward the dais. Elder Karth stepped forward, his silver beard braided with iron rings that clinked when he moved, his expression carved from stone. He raised one hand, and the last of the noise died. "Brothers, sisters." His voice rolled through the space, deep and commanding. "Tonight we gather to honor the old bonds and celebrate the new, to acknowledge the strength of our pack and the ties that bind us." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "And tonight we bear witness to something rare, something sacred." Sable's pulse hammered in her throat. Bren Halvik stepped forward. Bren moved, smooth, confident, still holding the girl's hand. He pulled her with him onto the dais, and the crowd parted like water, murmurs rising again, curiosity and confusion bleeding into the air. Sable's legs locked. She wanted to move, to push through the bodies and demand to know what the hell was happening, but her feet wouldn't obey. Bren stopped in the center of the platform. The girl beside him trembled, her fingers clutching his like a lifeline. "And Bren?" Bren looked out over the crowd with something Sable had never seen in his eyes before. Wonder. Pure, unfiltered wonder. "Most of you know me," he said, his voice steady, carrying. "You know my family. You know I've been engaged to Sable Ardent for the last 3 months." Her name in his mouth. Public. Acknowledged. For half a second, relief flooded her. Maybe this was nothing. Maybe he was about to explain. Maybe. But tonight, everything changes. The relief died. "This?" Bren lifted the girl's hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. This is Lily, and she's my fated mate. The words hit like a fist to the chest. Sable heard them, understood them, but her brain refused to process, skipping like a scratched record. Fated mate, fated mate. No, that wasn't possible. Fated bonds were rare, 1 in 1,000, and Bren he'd never said anything, never felt anything. He'd chosen her. I felt it the moment I saw her, Bren continued, his voice thick with emotion. 3 days ago, in town, she was just standing there, and the bond snapped into place so hard I thought my chest would crack open. He looked down at Lily, his expression soft, aching. I tried to ignore it. I swear to the goddess I tried, but I can't. This isn't something you fight. It's fate. The girl, Lily, made a small choked sound and pressed her face into his shoulder. Bren wrapped his arm around her, protective, possessive, and the crowd erupted. Voices everywhere, shouting, cheering, some wolves howling approval, others arguing, the noise swelling into a roar that rattled Sable's ribs. She stood frozen, the world spinning, her vision narrowing to a pinpoint. Bren holding someone else, claiming someone else, erasing her in front of everyone. "What about Sable?" someone yelled. The question cut through the chaos like a blade. The hall quieted again. Not completely, but enough. Enough for every eye to find her. 200 wolves turning, staring, watching her stand there, alone at the edge of the crowd, in her cheap dress, with her flat stomach and her absent scent. Bren's gaze found hers, and there was nothing in it. No regret, no apology, just pity. Sable. He said her name like it hurt. "I'm sorry. You have to understand, this isn't a choice. The bond, you said you loved me." Her voice came out thin, cracked, barely audible. She hated how small it sounded, hated the way her hands shook. "You said forever." "I thought I did." Bren's jaw tightened. "But this, Lily, this is real. This is what the goddess intended. You and I. We were a mistake. A mistake." The word landed like a stone in her gut. "You're calling off the engagement?" Elder Karth's voice cut in, sharp with disapproval. "Publicly? Now? I have to." Bren's hand tightened on Lily's waist. "I can't lie to her. I can't lie to the pack. Lily is my mate, my true mate, and I'm claiming her. Tonight." The hall exploded again, wolves arguing, snarling, some supporting Bren, others calling him a fool. Sable heard none of it. The noise faded into white static as her chest hollowed out, her lungs forgetting how to pull air. She pressed her hand harder against her stomach, still flat, still secret, and felt the weight of it crushing her from the inside. Pregnant. She was pregnant with his child, and he was standing 10 feet away, calling her a mistake. "This is disgraceful." The new voice cut through the chaos like a whip crack, cold, sharp, absolute. Every wolf in the hall froze. Sable's head snapped up. Kael Thornridge stood at the far end of the room, framed by the arched doorway, his silhouette carved from shadow and menace. He was tall, taller than Bren, broader through the shoulders, built like something meant to break bones and end arguments. His dark coat hung open over a black shirt, his hands loose at his sides, his expression utterly unreadable. But his eyes, goddess, his eyes, burned cold silver, the unmistakable mark of an alpha in full control. He stepped forward. The crowd parted, not because they wanted to, because their wolves demanded it. Submission rippled through the room like a shockwave, heads lowering, spines bending, even the strongest wolves stepping back as Kael walked through them without a word. He stopped at the base of the dais, looked up at Bren, and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "So," Kael said, his voice low, conversational, the kind of tone that made your hindbrain scream danger. "You're claiming a fated mate, in the middle of a pack celebration, after publicly humiliating your fiancé." He tilted his head. "Bold choice, Helvik." Bren's throat bobbed. "Alpha Thornridge, This isn't what?" Kael's smile widened. "Isn't a complete shit show? Isn't a violation of every code we have about honor and respect? Or isn't your problem anymore because you found your precious fated bond?" Bren's hand dropped from Lily's waist. The girl whimpered, shrinking back, and Sable felt a vicious, shameful flicker of satisfaction watching her cower. The bond is real, Bren said, voice tight. You can't deny a fated bond. I'm not denying it. Kale's gaze flicked to Lily, cold and assessing, then back to Bren. I'm questioning your timing and your judgment. You think the goddess smiles on a man who throws away his promises the second something shinier comes along? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Kale took a step closer, and Bren actually flinched. Explain it to me. Explain to Sable. Explain to everyone here why you're standing on that platform holding a human girl while your fiancé, your wolf fiancé, who you swore to bond with, is standing over there trying not to fall apart. Sable's breath hitched. She hadn't realized Kael knew her name. Hadn't realized he'd noticed her at all. Bren opened his mouth, closed it. His face flushed, shame and anger warring across his features. I don't owe you an explanation. No, Kael agreed. But you owe her one. He turned and looked straight at Sable. The world stopped. His eyes locked onto hers, silver, unblinking, predatory, and something jolted through her chest like lightning snapping a wire. Her wolf, silent and dormant for years, suddenly surged against her ribs, awake, alert, desperate to meet his gaze and hold it. She sucked in a breath, her knees threatening to buckle, and Kael's expression shifted. Just barely. A flicker of something, recognition, surprise, before it smoothed back into cold neutrality. He crossed the room in 4 strides, stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was overwhelming, taller than she'd thought, broader. The scent of him hit her like a wall, pine and smoke and something darker, something that made her wolf whine and press forward. She tilted her head back to meet his eyes, her pulse racing, and he stared down at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. You okay? He asked quietly. The question was so unexpected, so absurdly gentle, that she almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she shook her head. No. She wasn't okay. She was the furthest thing from okay. Kael's jaw tightened. Then he turned back to the crowd, his hands settling, firm, possessive, burning, on the small of her back. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice pitched to Carrie, command bleeding into every syllable. Bren Halvik can claim his fated mate. Fine. The bond is sacred. I won't interfere. Relief flickered across Bren's face. But, Kael continued, his hand pressing harder against Sable's spine, Sable Ardent doesn't walk out of here humiliated. She doesn't leave this hall unclaimed, unprotected, or dishonored. Sable's heart stopped. She's mine. The hall went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock, the kind that comes from disbelief so complete it sucks the air out of the room. Sable stared up at Kael, her mouth dry, her brain scrambling. What? My mate, Kael said, louder now, his eyes still locked on the crowd. Sable Ardent is my fated mate, and I'm claiming her, right now, in front of all of you. The room exploded. Wolves shouting, arguing, some laughing in disbelief, others howling approval. Elder Karth's voice rose above the chaos, demanding order, but no one listened. Sable couldn't hear any of it. Her ears were ringing, her vision blurring, Kael's words looping in her head like a broken track. My fated mate. My fated mate. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. She would have felt it, wouldn't she? Fated bonds weren't silent. They didn't just appear out of nowhere when it was convenient. She grabbed Kael's arm, her nails digging into the fabric of his coat. You're lying! He looked down at her, and for the first time she saw something crack in that cold, controlled mask. I'm not, he said quietly. But you don't have to believe me. You just have to say yes. Why? The word came out desperate, shaking. Why would you do this? His hand shifted on her back, his thumb brushing against her spine, and the touch sent a shiver straight through her. Because you're standing here pregnant and alone, and that bastard just threw you away like you're nothing. His voice dropped, rough and low. And you're not nothing, Sable. Not to me. Her breath caught. He knew, goddess. He knew. Say yes, Kael murmured, his eyes searching hers. Let me give you a way out. She should have said no, should have run, should have demanded answers, explanations, proof that this wasn't just another lie dressed up as salvation. But she was so tired and so afraid, and the weight of the secret in her belly was crushing her, and Bren was still standing on that dais with his arms around another woman, and the pack was watching, waiting, judging. "Yes," she whispered. Kale's eyes flared. He pulled her against his chest, one arm wrapping around her waist, the other hand sliding up to cup the back of her neck. She barely had time to gasp before he tilted her head back and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was claiming, pure and brutal, his mouth hot and demanding against hers, his teeth catching her bottom lip hard enough to sting. Her wolf surged, howling approval, and her body betrayed her completely, arching into him, her hands fisting in his coat as heat exploded through her veins. The bond snapped. Not gently, not like a whisper, like a freight train slamming into her chest, ripping her open, flooding her with sensations so intense she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but hold on as Kael's presence poured into her, vast and overwhelming and utterly inescapable. When he finally pulled back, she was shaking. The hall was silent again. Kael looked out over the crowd, his arms still locked around her waist, his expression carved from stone. "She's mine," he said. "Anyone got a problem with that?" No one answered. Bren stood on the dais, his face pale, his mouth open, Lily clinging to his arm like she might collapse. Elder Karth stared, his expression unreadable. The rest of the pack just watched. Kyle's hand tightened on Sable's waist. "Good," he said. Then he turned and walked her straight out of the hall, his grip unshakable, her legs barely keeping up, the bond humming between them like a live wire. And as the doors slammed shut behind them, Sable realized three things. One, Kael Thornridge wasn't lying. The bond was real. Two, she'd just agreed to mate the most dangerous wolf in the territory. And three, she had no idea what the hell she'd just done. The night air hit her like a slap, cold, sharp, clean after the suffocating heat of the hall. Sable stumbled on the stone steps outside the great hall, her heels catching, and Kael's hand shot out to steady her. She jerked away, her pulse hammering, and put 3 feet of distance between them before her legs stopped obeying her brain. "Don't touch me." The words came out hoarse, shaking. Kael stopped, lowered his hand, watched her with that same unreadable intensity that made her want to scream. "You just claimed me in front of the entire pack," Sable said, her voice rising. "You kissed me. You, goddess, what the hell was that?" "That," Kael said evenly, "was me keeping you from becoming Pack Omega by morning. I didn't ask you to. You didn't have to." He took a step closer, and she backed up instinctively, her spine hitting the cold stone wall behind her. He stopped just out of reach, his eyes catching the moonlight, glowing faint silver. "You were about to be exiled, Sable. Or worse, Bren humiliated you, publicly rejected you. In pack law, that makes you unclaimed, unwanted. Fair game for anyone who wants to challenge you for status. I can handle myself. Can you?" His gaze dropped, just for a second, to her stomach. Her hand flew to her belly, protective, defensive, and his mouth tightened. "How far along?" he asked quietly. "That's none of your business." "It is now." Kael's voice didn't rise, but the command in it made her wolf flatten, submissive. "You're my mate. That makes everything about you my business." "I didn't agree to that." "You said yes." "I said yes to—" She stopped, her throat closing. "To what? A way out? A lie?" She didn't even know. "This isn't real. The bond. You're faking it." "Am I?" He moved before she could react, closing the distance, his hand settling over her heart. She gasped, the contact sending a shock through her chest, and the bond flared, bright, searing, impossible to ignore. "You feel that?" Kael murmured, his voice low, rough. "That's not fake. That's the goddess damn truth, whether you like it or not." Sable shoved his hand away, her breath coming fast. You can't just claim someone because it's convenient." "Convenient?" Kael's laugh was short, bitter. "You think this is convenient for me? Taking on a mate I barely know, who's carrying another man's child in the middle of a pack power struggle? Then why?" She was shouting now, her voice cracking. "Why do this? Why claim me?" He stared at her for a long moment, his jaw working, something dark and complicated moving behind his eyes. "Because I've been waiting for you my whole life," he said finally, quietly. "And I'm not letting you go now." The words hit her like a punch. Sable opened her mouth, closed it. Her mind was spinning, her chest too tight, the bond humming between them like a living thing, insistent and relentless. "I don't believe you," she whispered. "I know." Kyle stepped back, his expression shuddering. "But you're still coming with me." "What?" "You're my mate now, publicly claimed. That means you live in my house under my protection until we figure this out." He turned, already walking toward the line of cars parked along the drive. "Get in the car, Sable." "I'm not going anywhere with you." He stopped, looked back over his shoulder, and the look in his eyes made her wolf whimper. "You've got two choices," he said, his voice flat, final. "You come with me now, willingly, and we deal with this like adults. Or you stay here, and by tomorrow morning every wolf in this territory will know you're unclaimed, pregnant, and vulnerable." His gaze hardened. "How long do you think you'll last?" Sable's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to run, wanted to do anything except admit that he was right. But he was. She had nowhere to go. No family. No friends who wouldn't turn on her the second they smelled weakness. And if the pack found out about the baby, Bren's baby, her stomach twisted. "Fine," she bit out, "but this doesn't mean I trust you." "Good," Kyle said. "I don't trust you either." He opened the passenger door of a sleek black car, too expensive, too pristine, and waited. Sable walked over on shaking legs, slid into the leather seat, and stared straight ahead as he closed the door and rounded the hood. The engine purred to life. Kyle pulled out onto the dark road, the trees closing in on either side, and Sable pressed her forehead against the cold window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The bond thrummed between them, insistent, undeniable, and as the pack house disappeared behind them, Sable realized she'd just traded one cage for another. She just didn't know yet which one would break her first. Takich. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress. Sable stared up at the sprawling stone structure as Kyle pulled into the circular drive, her stomach sinking. 3 stories. Iron-framed windows. Walls that looked like they could withstand a siege. It sat at the edge of pack territory, isolated, surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides and a sheer cliff drop on the 4th. Of course the Alpha lived somewhere that screamed, "Don't approach." Kale cut the engine, got out, rounded the car, and opened her door without a word. Sable didn't move. "I can't do this," she said quietly. "Yes, you can. I don't even know you." "You will." Kale held out his hand, waited. She stared at it, calloused, scarred across the knuckles, strong enough to snap bones, gentle enough, barely, that she almost believed he wouldn't. She took it. The bond sang. Kale pulled her out of the car, his grip firm, and led her up the stone steps to the heavy oak door. It swung open before he touched it, and a middle-aged woman stood in the entryway, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, her expression calm and assessing. "Alpha," she said, nodding. Then her gaze shifted to Sable. "And this must be the new Madame Thornridge." Sable's stomach flipped. Madame Thornridge. Goddess. "Sable, this is Iris," Kale said. "She runs the house. Anything you need, ask her." Iris smiled. Small, polite, utterly unreadable. "Welcome, madam. Your room is ready." "My room?" Sable echoed. "Separate from mine," Kyle said flatly. "For now." Relief and something sharper, disappointment, anger, twisted through her chest. She shoved it down. "I'll show you up," Iris said, already turning. Sable followed, hyper-aware of Kyle behind her, his presence heavy, oppressive, impossible to ignore. The house was as cold inside as it looked outside, all stone and dark wood and sharp angles, no warmth, no softness. They climbed a wide staircase, turned down a long hallway, and stopped at a door near the end. Iris opened it. The room was fine. Large, clean, a 4-poster bed with dark sheets, a fireplace already crackling, a window overlooking the forest. Neutral, impersonal, like a hotel room. "Your things will be brought over tomorrow," Iris said. "If you need anything tonight, pull the bell cord by the door." Sable nodded numbly. Iris left. Kyle stayed. Sable turned, her arms wrapped around herself, and found him leaning against the doorframe, watching her. "Say it," she said. Say what? Whatever you're thinking. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I'm thinking you look like you're about to bolt. I am. Don't. Kyle straightened, his expression going serious. I meant what I said. You're safe here. No one will touch you. No one will question you. And no one will know about the baby unless you tell them. Sable's throat tightened. Why are you doing this? I told you. No. She stepped closer, her hands curling into fists. Don't give me that fated mate bullshit. You don't know me. You've never even spoken to me before tonight, so why? Kale was silent for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Because I've been watching you for a long time, he said finally, quietly. And you deserve better than what Bren gave you. The words hung in the air between them, too honest, too raw. Sable's chest ached. Get some sleep, Kale said, already turning. We'll talk in the morning. Kale. He stopped. If you're lying to me, she said, her voice shaking, if this is some kind of game, it's not. Then prove it. He looked back at her, his eyes bright and burning. I will, he said. And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving Sable alone in the cold, silent room with nothing but the bond humming in her chest and the weight of everything she didn't understand pressing down on her shoulders. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking, her mind spinning. Outside, the wind howled, and somewhere deep in the forest, a wolf answered. Beauty. Bach. She didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Bren's face, heard his voice. You were a mistake. The words looped endlessly, carving deeper with each repetition, and beneath them, quieter but no less devastating, Kale's confession. I've been waiting for you my whole life. Sable rolled onto her side, staring at the dying fire, her hand pressed flat against her stomach. 10 weeks! That's how far along she was. 10 weeks since the night Bren had kissed her breathless under the stars, since he'd whispered promises and forever, since she'd believed, foolishly, desperately, that maybe she could have something good. And now she was here, in a stranger's house, claimed by an alpha she didn't trust. Carrying a child the world would call a bastard the second they learned the truth. The bond pulsed, faint, insistent, like a second heartbeat thrumming just beneath her ribs. She hated it, hated how it made her aware of Kyle even now, somewhere deeper in the house, his presence pressing against her senses like weight on water. Hated how her wolf responded, restless and eager, desperate to follow the pull and find him. Sable sat up, shoving the covers aside, and crossed to the window. The forest stretched endlessly below, black trees against a blacker sky, the moon hidden behind clouds. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and tried to think. What was Kyle's angle? No one did something like this without a reason. Publicly claiming a disgraced, scentless wolf in front of the entire pack, it was political suicide. Unless he wanted something from her. Unless... A soft knock at the door made her jump. Madame? Iris's voice, calm and even. May I come in? Sable hesitated, then crossed to the door and opened it. Iris stood in the hallway with a tray, tea, from the smell of it, and something else. Bread, maybe. She stepped inside without waiting for permission, setting the tray on the small table by the fireplace. You should eat, Iris said. The alpha mentioned you might be delicate. Sable's jaw tightened. He told you. He tells me everything. Iris poured the tea with practiced efficiency, her movements smooth, unbothered. And before you ask, no, I won't judge you. It's not my place. But you think I'm an idiot. I think, Iris said carefully, that you're in a difficult situation, and the alpha is trying to help. Why? The question burst out before Sable could stop it. Why does he care? He doesn't know me. He's known you since you were 16. Sable froze. Iris set the teapot down, her expression unreadable. You don't remember, do you? Remember what? The fire. 7 years ago. The old pack house on the East Ridge. Sable's chest went cold. She remembered. Of course she remembered. The night her mother died. The night everything ended. I was there, Sable said slowly, but I don't... Kale wasn't... He pulled you out. Iris's voice was quiet, firm. You were trapped on the second floor. The staircase had collapsed. Your mother was already gone, but you were still alive, barely. And the Alpha, he was only 19 then, not even officially Alpha yet. He went in after you, carried you out through the flames. Sable's hand started shaking. No, she would have remembered that. She would have... You were unconscious by the time he got you to safety, Iris continued. Smoke inhalation, burns on your arms and legs. You spent 3 days in the hospital, and when you woke up, she paused. You didn't ask about him. You didn't ask about anyone. You just shut down. Sable sank into the chair, her legs giving out. He's been watching you ever since, Iris said quietly, making sure you were safe, making sure the pack didn't turn on you when your scent never came in. He's the reason you weren't exiled years ago. Stop! Sable's voice cracked. Just stop. Iris was silent for a moment. Then she crossed to the door, her hand on the knob. The Alpha doesn't lie, she said, and he doesn't do anything without a reason. If he claimed you tonight, it's because he meant it. She paused. Whether you believe that or not is up to you. She left. Sable sat there, staring at the fire, her mind spinning. 7 years. 7 years, and she hadn't known. The bond pulsed again, stronger now, insistent, and this time she didn't fight it. She stood, crossed to the door, stepped into the hallway. The house was silent, dark except for the faint glow of moonlight through the tall windows. Sable followed the pull, down the hallway, down the stairs, through a sitting room she barely registered, until she found herself standing outside a heavy wooden door at the far end of the first floor. Kael's office. She knew without knocking. She knocked anyway. Come in. His voice was rough, tired. Sable pushed the door open. Kael sat behind a massive oak desk, his coat discarded, his sleeves rolled up, a glass of whiskey in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting, surprise, then something darker, more guarded. You should be sleeping, he said. Iris told me. Sable's voice was steady somehow. About the fire. Kael went very still. She had no right. Why didn't you tell me? Sable crossed the room, her hands curling into fists. Why didn't you say anything? 7 years, Kael. 7 goddamn years, and you never... What was I supposed to say? Kael set the glass down hard enough to rattle. That I saved your life once, so now you owe me? That I've been waiting for you to notice me like some pathetic... He stopped, breathed. You were grieving. You were a kid. I wasn't going to add to that. I'm not a kid anymore. I know. His eyes burned. Believe me, I know. The bond flared between them, sharp and electric, and Sable sucked in a breath. You felt it that night, didn't you? She whispered. The bond. You've known this whole time. Kael stood slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. I felt it the second I touched you, he said. Quiet. Raw. You were unconscious, dying, and the bond snapped into place so hard I thought it would kill me. He stepped around the desk, closing the distance. But you were 16, a child, and I was not. So I waited. For what? For you to grow up, for the right moment, for... He stopped, his jaw working. For you to choose someone else, apparently. Sable's chest ached. Bren was never your mate, Kael's voice went hard. You settled for him because you thought you didn't deserve better. Because the pack made you believe you were broken. I am broken. No. Kael reached out, his hand cupping her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm not letting you forget that. She should have pulled away, should have put distance between them, built walls, protected herself. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I'm pregnant with another man's child, she whispered. I don't care. You should. I don't. His forehead dropped to hers, his breath warm against her skin. That baby is yours, which makes it mine, and anyone who says otherwise answers to me. Sable's eyes burned. Why? She asked again, her voice breaking. Because you're mine, Kael said simply. You've always been mine, and I protect what's mine. The bond surged, and this time Sable didn't fight it. She kissed him, hard, desperate. Her hands fisting in his shirt, her body pressing against his, the bond roaring approval as Kael's arms locked around her waist, and pulled her closer. He kissed her back like he was drowning, his mouth hot and demanding, his teeth catching her lip, his hands sliding up her back. And then he stopped, pulled back, breathing hard. "Not like this," he said roughly. "What?" "Not when you're confused. Not when you don't trust me." His hands framed her face, his eyes searching hers. "When we do this, and we will, I want you to mean it." Sable stared at him, her chest heaving, her mind spinning. "Go to bed, Sable," Kael murmured, "before I change my mind." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, explanations, proof that any of this was real. But her body was shaking, her emotions too raw, the bond humming between them like a live wire. So she went, walked out of his office, down the hall, up the stairs, back to her cold, empty room. And as she collapsed onto the bed, fully clothed, her body still vibrating with want and confusion and something dangerously close to hope, she heard it, a howl, distant, mournful, coming from the forest, and beneath it, closer, inside the house. Kael. Answering. Sable pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the bond thrumming, relentless, undeniable. And for the first time in 7 years, she let herself wonder, what if he was telling the truth? Ok. Morning came too soon. Sable woke to sunlight slicing through the curtains and the smell of coffee drifting up from somewhere below. She sat up slowly, her body aching, her mind still fogged with exhaustion. For half a second, she forgot where she was. Then it all crashed back. Bren, Lily, the claim, Kael. She groaned, pressing her palms against her eyes. A soft knock. "Madame?" Iris's voice. "Breakfast is ready. The Alpha is waiting." Of course he was. Sable dragged herself out of bed, found a robe hanging in the closet, too big, probably Kael's, and wrapped it around herself before opening the door. Iris stood in the hallway, perfectly composed as always. "This way." She led Sable downstairs to a bright, airy dining room Sable hadn't seen the night before. Sunlight poured through tall windows overlooking the cliffside, and a long table was set with enough food to feed 10 people. Kael sat at the head of the table, already dressed, his hair still damp from a shower, a mug of coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. He looked up when she entered, his gaze sweeping over her, quick, assessing, before he nodded to the chair at his right. "Sit." Sable bristled at the command but sat anyway, too tired to fight. Iris poured her coffee without asking, set a plate in front of her, disappeared. Kael set the tablet down. "We need to talk," he said. "About? What happens next?" Sable took a long sip of coffee, buying time. "And what does happen next?" "You stay here, under my protection. We present a united front to the pack." Kael's tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing a business deal. "No one questions the bond. No one touches you. And in return, you play the part." "The part?" "My mate." Sable set the mug down carefully. "You want me to lie. I want you to survive." Kael leaned forward, his gaze intense. Bren's claim last night shifted the pack dynamics. There are wolves who'll see you as weak now, vulnerable. If we don't show them you're protected, they'll come after me. "Yes." Sable's stomach twisted. "And the baby?" "No one knows. No one will know. Unless you want them to." Kael paused. "How far along are you?" 10 weeks. So you've got time. A few months at least before it shows." His jaw tightened. "We'll figure it out before then." "Figure what out?" "How to explain it." Sable stared at him. "You're seriously planning to claim another man's child as yours?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's the only way to keep you both safe." The answer was so blunt, so absolute, that Sable didn't know how to argue. "What if I don't want this?" she asked quietly. Kael was silent for a long moment. "Then tell me," he said, "and I'll let you go." Sable's breath caught. "But if you leave," Kael continued, his voice dropping, "you're on your own. No protection, no pack. And when they find out about the baby, and they will, Bren will either claim it or reject it. Either way, you lose." He was right. Goddess, she hated that he was right. "I need time," she said finally. "You don't have it." "Then make time." Sable stood, her chair scraping back. "You want me to play your mate? Fine,
but I'm not doing it blind. I want answers. I want to know what you're getting out of this. And I want to know why the hell you've been watching me for 7 years without saying a goddamn word. Kale's eyes flashed. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Deal, he said. But we do this my way, on my terms. And when I give you an order, you follow it.
Sable's hands curled into fists. I'm not your... You are. Kale stood, rounding the table, and suddenly he was right there, crowding her space, his presence overwhelming. You became mine the second you said yes last night, and whether you like it or not, that means you're under my authority now. Fuck your authority. Careful. His voice dropped to a growl. My wolf doesn't take disrespect lightly. Neither does mine. They stared at each other, the bond crackling between them, tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Then Kyle stepped back. Your things are being moved in today, he said, his tone clipped, controlled. Iris will show you around the house. Tonight, we're attending a packed council meeting, together. You'll sit at my side and you'll smile, and you'll let everyone see that you're exactly where you belong. And if I refuse, you won't. You don't know that.
Yes, Kale said quietly, his eyes burning. I do.
He left. Sable stood there shaking, her chest tight, the bond humming with something dark and electric. And deep in her gut, beneath the fear and anger and confusion, a small traitorous part of her whispered, He's right. Sable spent the rest of the morning avoiding Kyle. Not physically, that was impossible in a house where his presence saturated every room like smoke. But she kept her distance. Stayed in her room while Iris supervised the delivery of her belongings. 3 boxes, pathetic and small, everything she owned in the world fitting into the trunk of a sedan. She unpacked mechanically, hanging clothes she barely remembered buying, setting books on shelves she'd never chosen, trying not to think about how temporary this all felt. How trapped. The bond hummed constantly now, a low vibration beneath her ribs, insistent and irritating, like tinnitus she couldn't shake. Every time Kyle moved through the house, down the hall, up the stairs, across the foyer below, she felt it. Felt him. And her wolf responded every goddamn time, ears pricking, attention snapping toward him like he was the only thing that mattered. She hated it. Hated how her body betrayed her, how the bond made her hyper-aware of his location, his mood, the exact moment he stepped outside to take a phone call, because the pull lessened just enough to let her breathe. By noon, she was ready to claw her own skin off. A knock at the door made her jump. It's open, she called, expecting Iris. Kyle walked in. Sable's spine went rigid. He'd changed. Dark jeans now, a fitted black shirt that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. His sleeves rolled up to expose forearms corded with muscle and old scars. He looked like he'd just come from a fight, or was heading toward one. We need to go over tonight, he said without preamble. I'm not going. Yes, you are. Sable turned from the closet, crossing her arms. You can't just order me around. I can. Kale stepped further into the room, his gaze sweeping over the half-unpacked boxes, the clothes draped across the bed. And I will, especially when your safety depends on it. My safety, Sable repeated flatly. Or your reputation? His eyes flashed. Careful. Why? You going to punish me? She took a step closer, anger bubbling up hot and reckless. Lock me in? Threaten me? What exactly happens when I don't play along with your little charade? Kyle closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Sable's back hit the wall before she could react, his hand slamming on either side of her head, caging her in. The bond roared to life, electric and overwhelming, and her wolf whined, torn between submission and defiance. You think this is a game? Kyle's voice was low, dangerous, his face inches from hers. You think I'm doing this for fun? I think you're doing this for power. Sable forced herself to meet his eyes, even as her pulse hammered. You saw an opportunity and you took it. Publicly claiming the wolf Bren rejected makes you look magnanimous, strong. The alpha who rescues the broken. Stop. Why? Because I'm right? Kale's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then enlighten me. Sable's voice dropped, vicious. Tell me what you get out of this, because there's always something, isn't there? No one does anything without a reason. For a long moment, Kyle just stared at her, his breathing harsh, his eyes burning with something too complicated to name. Then he pushed off the wall and stepped back. "The Pack Council meets tonight at 8, he said, his tone clipped, controlled. "You'll be there. You'll sit beside me, and you'll show them that you're not some broken, discarded thing they can prey on." He paused at the door. "Wear something that doesn't make you look like you're going to a funeral." "Fuck you." "Later," Kyle said. "When you mean it." He left. Sable stood there shaking, her hands curled into fists, the bond still crackling between them like a live wire. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to run straight out the front door and never look back. But beneath the anger, buried deep where she didn't want to acknowledge it, a part of her was terrified he was right. The Pack Council met in a low stone building at the heart of the territory, half hidden by ancient oaks and warded by enough protective magic to make Sable's skin prickle as they approached. Kale drove in silence, his hand steady on the wheel, his expression unreadable. He'd changed again. Dark suit now, no tie. The jacket tailored perfectly to his frame. He looked like a weapon wrapped in expensive fabric. Sable had settled on a simple black dress, fitted but not revealing, her hair pulled back, her makeup minimal. She looked composed, controlled. Nothing like the girl who'd stood in that hall last night watching her life implode. Kale parked near the entrance, cut the engine, didn't move. "Rules," he said finally. "Excuse me? For tonight." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You don't speak unless I tell you to. You don't answer questions directly. You defer to me. And if anyone challenges you, you stay silent and let me handle it." Sable stared at him. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking?" "You look like an asshole."
Kale's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Good, because that's exactly what they need to see." He reached across the console, his hand settling on her knee, warm, possessive, the touch sending a shock through her. "This isn't a democracy, Sable. It's a wolf pack. And in a wolf pack, strength is the only thing that matters. You show weakness, and they'll rip you apart." "I'm not weak." "I know." His hand tightened. "But they don't. So tonight, you're going to let me show them."
"By treating me like property?" "By treating you like my mate." Kale's gaze locked onto hers. "There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting." "Then sit closer." Before she could respond, he was out of the car, rounding the hood, opening her door. He held out his hand, command, not request, and Sable took it because refusing would prove his point. The bond hummed approval as his fingers laced through hers. They walked up the stone steps together, and the heavy oak doors swung open before they reached them. The council chamber was circular, ringed with high-backed chairs occupied by the pack's senior wolves, elders, ranked fighters, the heads of prominent families. At least 30 of them, all turning to watch as Kyle entered with Sable on his arm. The room went silent. Kale didn't pause. He walked straight to the head of the circle, to the raised chair that marked the Alpha's seat, and sat. Then he pulled Sable down into the smaller chair beside him, not quite equal, but close enough to make a statement. His hand stayed locked around hers. Elder Karth sat directly across from them, his expression carved from granite. To his left sat Bren's father, Marcus Halvik, his weathered face tight with barely concealed anger. And scattered throughout the circle, wolves who'd watched her humiliation last night, who'd seen Bren discard her, who probably thought she was pathetic. "Alpha Thornridge," Karth's voice cut through the silence. "You've brought a guest." "Not a guest." Kale's tone was flat, final. "My mate. She has every right to be here." A murmur rippled through the circle. Marcus leaned forward. "The bond was only claimed last night. It hasn't been verified, tested." "Are you questioning my word?" Kyle's voice dropped to a growl. Marcus's wolf flinched. Sable saw it in the way his shoulders hunched, the way his gaze dropped. But he held his ground. "I'm questioning the timing. Convenient, isn't it? Sable gets rejected, and suddenly she's your fated mate?" "The bond doesn't care about timing," Kyle said coldly. "It is what it is." "Then prove it." This from a younger wolf near the back. Garrett, one of Bren's friends, his expression openly hostile. "Let her speak for herself. Let her tell us she feels the bond. Kale's hand tightened on Sable's, a warning. She ignored it. I feel it, she said clearly. Every eye snapped to her. It's real, Sable continued, her voice steady even as her heart raced. Whether you believe it or not doesn't change the truth. Interesting, Garrett said, leaning back. Because 3 months ago you were engaged to Bren. Swore you loved him. Now you're sitting here claiming the Alpha is your fated mate? He smirked. Forgive me if that sounds like bullshit. Kale moved. 1 second he was seated. The next he was across the circle, his hand wrapped around Garrett's throat, slamming him back into his chair hard enough to crack wood. Say that again, Kale said softly. Garrett choked, his face going red, his wolf flattening in submission. Kale! Karth's voice sharp with command. Stand down! Kale didn't move. His grip stayed locked around Garrett's throat, his eyes burning silver, his wolf rising so close to the surface that the air in the room went cold. She's my mate, Kyle said, his voice barely human. And if anyone in this room disrespects her again, I'll tear their throat out. Are we clear? Silence. Then slowly, heads nodded. Kyle released Garrett, who collapsed forward gasping. Kale walked back to his seat, sat, and pulled Sable's hand back into his like nothing had happened. Now, Kyle said calmly, does anyone else have questions about the bond? No one spoke. Good. Kyle's gaze swept the circle. Then let's discuss the real issue. Bren Halvik's claim last night violated pack law. He abandoned his fiancée publicly, humiliated her in front of witnesses, and broke a sworn bond without proper cause. Marcus stiffened. He found his fated mate. That's cause. Is it? Kale leaned forward. Because fated bonds don't just appear out of nowhere. They form at first touch, first meeting. So either Bren lied about the bond, or he met this human weeks ago and said nothing while he was still engaged to Sable. Sable's chest went tight. She hadn't thought of that. What are you implying? Marcus demanded. I'm implying your son is either a liar or a coward, Kyle said flatly. And either way, he owes Sable restitution. Restitution? Marcus's face flushed. For what? For breaking a sworn bond. For public humiliation. For abandoning his mate without cause. Kale's voice went hard. Pack law is clear. He owes her blood price or exile. The room erupted. Wolves shouting, arguing, some supporting Kyle, others defending Bren. Sable sat frozen, her mind spinning, as Kale calmly laid out a case she hadn't asked him to make. Enough, Karth's voice cracked like a whip. The room quieted. Alpha Thornridge raises a valid point. The law does provide for restitution in cases of broken bonds. He paused. But Sable would have to bring the charge herself. All eyes turned to her. Sable's throat went dry. Well? Garrett, still rubbing his throat, sneered. What do you say, Sable? You going to let your new mate fight your battles for you? Or do you have a spine? Kale's hand tightened on hers, a clear warning. Don't engage. Sable pulled her hand free, stood. I don't need him to fight my battles, she said quietly, and I don't need the council to decide my worth. She looked at Marcus. Your son broke his word, publicly, in front of the entire pack. If he feels no guilt about that, then he's not the man I thought he was. She paused. I don't want blood price. I don't want exile. I just want him to admit what he did was wrong. That's not how this works, Karth said. Then maybe it should be. Sable's voice hardened. Because if we're going to tear each other apart over fated bonds and broken promises, maybe we should start by being honest about what we've done. Silence. Kyle stood beside her, his presence solid, overwhelming. The matter is tabled, Karth said finally. We'll revisit it when Bren returns from securing his mate bond. He turned to Kyle. As for Sable's place in this pack, the bond will be tested at the next full moon. If it's genuine, she'll be acknowledged as your mate. If not, it's genuine, Kale said. Then you have nothing to worry about. Karth's smile was thin. Dismissed. Kyle didn't wait. He grabbed Sable's hand and pulled her toward the exit, his grip unbreakable, his pace fast enough that she had to half jog to keep up. They made it to the car before she ripped her hand free. What the hell was that? She demanded. That, Kyle said, yanking open the driver's door, was politics. You almost killed Garrett. He deserved it. You can't just attack people who question me. Yes, Kyle said, sliding into the seat. I can. Get in the car. No. Sable stood her ground. Not until you explain what you're doing. Blood price? Restitution? I didn't ask you to. You didn't have to. Kale's eyes blazed. Bren humiliated you. The pack saw it. And if I don't make him answer for that, they'll assume you're weak, that you don't matter, that I don't care. He leaned forward. Is that what you want? To be invisible? I want to make my own choices. Then choose to trust me. Kyle's voice dropped. Just this once. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Sable stared at him, her chest tight, the bond humming between them. She got in the car. Bag. The drive back was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Kale's hands gripped the wheel too tight, his jaw set, his wolf riding just beneath his skin. Sable could feel it. The barely controlled violence, the rage simmering, the bond amplifying every emotion until it bled into her. They pulled into the drive. Kyle killed the engine. Neither of them moved. You think I'm controlling, Kyle said finally. I know you are. Good. He turned to face her. Because I am. And I'm not going to apologize for it. Sable's hands curled into fists. You don't get to decide everything. I'm the alpha. That's exactly what I get to do. Not with me. Especially with you. Kyle's gaze pinned her. You're my mate. That means you're under my protection, my authority. And when I give you an order, you follow it. Or what? Or you get hurt. His voice went rough. And I can't. He stopped, breathed. I can't let that happen. Sable's throat tightened. Why? Because I've already lost you once. The words hung between them, raw and unguarded. The fire, Sable whispered. You died in my arms. Kale's hands were shaking now. For 30 seconds, you were gone. No pulse, no breath. And His voice cracked. I'm not doing that again, ever. So if that makes me controlling, if that makes me an asshole, I don't care. You're alive. You're here. And I'll do whatever it takes to keep you that way. Sable couldn't breathe. You can't save me from everything, she said. Watch me. He got out of the car. Sable sat there, her chest heaving, the bond screaming at her to follow him, to close the distance, to accept what he was offering, even if it terrified her. She followed. Found him in the foyer, pacing, his coat discarded, his hands running through his hair. Kyle. He stopped, turned. I need you to answer something, Sable said. Honestly? Always. Did you know? About Bren? About the bond being fake? Kale went very still. What? Last night, at the hall. You said the bond was convenient, like you weren't surprised. Sable's voice shook. Did you know it wasn't real? No. Kale stepped closer. But I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? He tilted his head. Or would you have thought I was just trying to manipulate you? Sable opened her mouth, closed it. Exactly, Kale said quietly. So I waited. And when the opportunity came to claim you, I took it. Because you felt the bond. Because I felt it for 7 years. Kale closed the distance, his hands framing her face. And I'm done waiting. He kissed her, hard, desperate. The bond igniting between them like wildfire, heat flooding her veins, her wolf howling approval. Sable kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his as Kyle backed her against the wall. His mouth moved to her throat, teeth scraping, and she gasped, her head falling back. Tell me to stop, Kale growled against her skin. No. His hand slid down her sides, gripping her hips, and Sable's mind went blank. Nothing but sensation and want, and the bond screaming, yes, yes, yes. A door slammed upstairs. They froze. Footsteps. Coming down the hall. Kale pulled back, breathing hard, his eyes wild. Iris appeared at the top of the stairs, stopped, took in the scene. Kyle caging Sable against the wall, both of them flushed and disheveled, and raised one eyebrow. Dinner is ready, she said calmly. When you're finished. She disappeared. Sable pressed her hands against Kyle's chest, her face burning. We should... Yeah, Kale stepped back, running a hand over his face. We should. But neither of them moved. The bond thrummed between them, insistent, demanding. This is insane, Sable whispered. I know. I don't even know if I can trust you. I know that too. Kale's gaze softened. But you're here, and that's enough. For now. Sable wanted to argue, wanted to demand more, better, proof that this wasn't just another manipulation. But her body was still humming from his touch. Her wolf settled for the first time in days, and the bond felt right, even if nothing else did. They ate in silence. Sable pushed food around her plate, her appetite non-existent, while Kyle made calls in the next room, his voice low and tense. She caught fragments, something about border patrols, about a rogue sighting near the eastern ridge, about doubled security at the pack house. When he finally returned, his expression was grim. What's wrong? Sable asked. Nothing you need to worry about. KL, he sighed, sat across from her. There's been activity near the old forest, scent trails that don't belong to our pack. Could be rogues, could be something else. Something else like what? I don't know yet. His jaw tightened. But until I do, you don't leave this house without me. Understood? You're putting me under house arrest? I'm keeping you safe. That's the same thing. No, Kyle said quietly. It's not. Sable set her fork down. What aren't you telling me? Kale was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When Bren claimed Lily, he said finally, he said the bond snapped into place 3 days ago. In town, completely random. So? So fated bonds don't work that way. They form at first touch, first meeting, usually before puberty. Kale's eyes met hers. Which means either Bren met Lily when she was a child and never said anything, or the bond was forced, Sable finished, her stomach sinking. Exactly. That's not possible. It shouldn't be. Kyle leaned back. But if someone powerful enough wanted to break an existing bond and create a new one, who would do that? Someone who wanted you vulnerable. Kale's gaze hardened. Someone who benefits from you being unclaimed. Sable's hands started shaking. You think this was deliberate? That someone orchestrated Bren leaving me? I think, Kyle said carefully, that you're more important than you realize, and that scares the hell out of certain people. I'm nobody. I'm scentless. I don't... You're my mate, Kale's voice cut through her panic. That alone makes you a target. Sable stood, her chair scraping back. This is insane. You're telling me someone used dark magic to destroy my engagement so they could, what? Hurt me? Hurt you? Yes. Then we go to the council. We tell them. And say what? Kale stood as well. That we think Bren's fated bond is fake? Based on what evidence? A feeling? They'll laugh us out of the chamber. Then we find proof. We will. Kale crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. But until then, you stay close, you stay safe, and you trust me to handle this. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Yes, Kale said firmly. You can. Sable jerked out of his grip. Stop telling me what to do. Stop fighting me on everything. Maybe if you explained instead of commanded, maybe if you listened. I am listening. I just don't like what I'm hearing. They stared at each other, the bond crackling, tension so thick it hurt to breathe. Kyle's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression went cold. What? Sable demanded. Bren's back. Her stomach dropped. What? He just crossed into pack territory with Lily. Kale's jaw tightened. And he's asking for a formal audience, tomorrow, at the pack house. Why? I don't know. Kyle typed something, his thumbs moving fast. But we're about to find out. Sable's chest went tight. Tomorrow. She'd have to see Bren again. Face him. Stand beside Kyle and pretend everything was fine while her entire world was still fracturing. I can't, she whispered. Yes, you can. Kale pocketed his phone, his gaze locking onto hers. Because you're stronger than you think. And because I'll be right there with you. What if he wants to talk to me? He won't get the chance. Kale's voice went hard. You're mine now. And he doesn't get to touch you, speak to you, or even look at you unless I allow it. That's not your decision. Yes, Kael said softly, dangerously. It is. Before she could argue, he turned and walked out. Sable stood alone in the dining room, her hands shaking, her mind racing. Tomorrow. She'd see Bren tomorrow, and she had no idea what she was going to say. Sleep didn't come. Sable lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every conversation, every touch, every moment since Kael had claimed her. The bond hummed constantly now, louder when Kael was close, quieter when he moved away, but never silent. She hated it. Hated how it made her aware of him even now, somewhere down the hall, pacing his office, still awake. She should have been thinking about Bren, about tomorrow, about what she'd say if he tried to apologize or explain or justify what he'd done. But all she could think about was Kael, the way he'd looked at her in the foyers, the way he'd kissed her like he'd been starving for it, the way his hands had burned against her skin, the way he'd said, "I felt it for 7 years." Sable pressed her hand against her stomach, still flat, still hiding the secret that would destroy everything if it came out. 10 weeks. She had maybe 2 months before it started to show. 2 months to figure out how to explain a pregnancy that predated Kael's claim by over a month. 2 months before everything fell apart. Unless a soft knock at the door made her sit up. "Come in," she called, expecting Iris. Kael stepped inside. He was still dressed, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled up, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He stopped just inside the doorway, his gaze finding hers in the darkness. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No." "Me neither." He hesitated, then, "Can I stay?" Sable's breath caught. "What?" "Just..." Kael ran a hand through his hair. "I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't think you do either." He was right, goddess. She hated that he was right. "Fine," she said. "But no, I know." Kael crossed to the chair by the window, settled into it, his long legs stretching out. "I'll stay here." Sable lay back down, pulling the blanket up, hyper-aware of him watching her. "Kael?" "Yeah?" "Why did you really claim me?" Silence. Then quietly, "Because the thought of losing you again was worse than anything else I could imagine." Sable closed her eyes, her chest aching. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough." "Like what?" "I know you're stubborn and brave, and you've been fighting your whole life just to exist in a pack that told you you weren't good enough." Kael's voice dropped. "I know you hide when you're scared. I know you bite your lip when you're thinking too hard. And I know..." He stopped. "I know that when you smile, really smile, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Sable's throat closed. "That's not knowing me," she managed. "That's watching me." "Maybe," Kael said, "but I'm done watching from a distance." She wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, protect herself, keep the walls up, but she was so tired, and he was here. "Stay," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." The bond hummed, warm and steady, and for the first time in days, Sable felt something close to safe. She fell asleep to the sound of Kael's breathing, deep and even, and the knowledge that tomorrow everything would change. Morning came too fast. Sable woke to sunlight and an empty chair. Kael was gone, but the imprint of him lingered, his scent on the air, the bond still thrumming steady. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking as she pulled on jeans and a sweater. Today. She'd face Bren today. Downstairs, Kael was already in the foyer, suited up, his expression carved from stone. He looked up when she descended, his gaze sweeping over her. "Ready?" he asked. "No." "Good answer." He held out his hand. "Let's go." The pack house was already crowded when they arrived. Wolves everywhere, watching, whispering, their eyes tracking Sable as Kael led her through the main hall toward the council chamber. She kept her chin up, her spine straight, even as her stomach churned. The doors opened. Bren stood in the center of the room, and beside him, pale and trembling, Lily. Sable's breath stopped. The girl looked worse than she had that night, thinner, fragile. Her blonde hair lank, her skin almost translucent, dark circles under her eyes. And when Bren touched her arm, steadying her, Lily flinched. Kyle's hand tightened on Sable's. Alpha Thornridge. Bren's voice was steady, formal. Thank you for seeing us. You asked for an audience, Kyle said coldly. You have 5 minutes. Bren's jaw tightened. I came to apologize. To Sable. Every eye in the room turned to her. Sable's nails dug into Kyle's hand. For what? Kale asked when she didn't speak. For how I handled things, for the public humiliation, for... Bren stopped, his gaze finding Sable's. For not being honest from the start. About the bond? Kale's voice went sharp. Bren hesitated, and in that hesitation, Sable saw it. Fear. The bond is real, Bren said, but his voice wavered. I felt it. Liar. The word came from Lily. Every head snapped toward her. The girl was shaking, her hands fisted in her dress, her eyes wide and wet. It's not real, she whispered. The bond. It was never real. The room exploded, and Sable's world shattered again. As Lily collapsed, Bren caught her, and Kyle's grip on her hand turned bruising. What the hell is she talking about? Kale demanded. Bren's face had gone white. She doesn't know what she's... I know exactly what I'm saying. Lily's voice rose, stronger now, desperate. Someone forced this. Someone made him think he felt a bond that doesn't exist, and Her voice cracked. I can't do this anymore. Sable couldn't breathe. Kyle stepped forward, his presence filling the room. Who? He asked quietly, dangerously. Lily's gaze found his, and she said one word that changed everything. Karth. For 3 seconds, no one moved, no one breathed. The council chamber, packed with wolves, thick with tension, went so silent Sable could hear her own heartbeat hammering against her ribs. Then chaos erupted. Wolves shouting, surging forward, voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief and rage. Bren stumbled back, pulling Lily against his chest as she collapsed into him, sobbing. And Kyle went absolutely still, the kind of still that preceded violence. Everyone out! His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Not loud. Didn't need to be. The command in it made every wolf in the room freeze mid-motion. Now! Alpha, you can't just... Someone started. Kale's head turned, silver eyes blazing. Out! They fled, all of them. Even the senior fighters, even the ranked wolves who should have stayed. They scrambled for the exits like prey scattering before a predator. Within 30 seconds, the chamber was empty except for 6 people. Kyle, Sable, Bren, Lily, Marcus Halvik, who'd stayed because his son was involved, and Elder Karth himself, still seated in his high-backed chair, his expression utterly calm. Too calm. Sable's stomach twisted. Kale crossed the room in 4 strides, stopped directly in front of Karth, and stared down at the old wolf with an intensity that made the air crackle. Explain, Kyle said quietly. Explain what? Karth's voice was mild, pleasant even. The hysterical accusations of a frightened human girl? She's not hysterical. Kale's hands curled into fists at his sides. And she named you, specifically, so I'll ask again. Explain. Karth sighed, stood slowly, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He was shorter than Kale by several inches, older by decades, but he held himself like he owned the room. The girl is confused, Karth said, his gaze shifting to Lily. Overwhelmed by the bond, perhaps. It happens with humans. They don't understand what they're feeling, and they lash out. I'm not confused. Lily's voice shook, but she pushed away from Bren, standing on her own. You came to me 3 weeks ago. You said you could help me, that you knew someone who needed a mate, someone important, and that I'd be taken care of. Her hands trembled. You gave me something, a tea. You said it would make the bond easier, and then Bren found me and everything went wrong. Enough. Bren's voice was hoarse. Lily, you don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. She turned to face him, tears streaming. I tried to tell you. I tried to say it didn't feel right, that something was wrong, but you were so sure, and A sob choked her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But it's not real. What you feel, it's not me. Bren staggered back like she'd struck him. Sable watched it happen, watched the color drain from his face, watched his hands shake, watched the foundation of everything he'd believed crack and splinter. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a cold, hollow emptiness where her anger should have been. This is ridiculous. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed. Elder Karth has served this pack for 40 years. You can't seriously believe— I believe, Kyle said, his eyes never leaving Karth, that someone forced a false bond to break an existing engagement, and that the only person with both the knowledge and the resources to pull that off is standing right in front of me. Prove it, Karth said calmly. Give me time. I will. Time? Karth smiled, thin, sharp. Or are you simply looking for an excuse to remove me from the council? It's no secret you've wanted more control, Alpha. Perhaps this is just convenient theater. Kale's wolf surged so close to the surface that his eyes flared full silver, his canines lengthening. Sable moved without thinking, stepped between them. Her hand pressed flat against Kale's chest, too warm, his heart racing beneath her palm, and she felt the bond snap taut, anchoring him. Don't, she said quietly. Kale's gaze dropped to hers. For a moment she thought he'd push past her anyway, thought the wolf would take over and Karth would be dead before anyone could intervene. Then Kyle breathed, stepped back, his hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his chest. If you're innocent, Sable said, turning to face Karth, then you won't mind submitting to a truth reading. The room went silent again. Karth's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Gone too fast to name. Truth readings require a seer, he said. We don't have one in this territory. Then we'll bring one in, Kyle said. That could take weeks. So we wait. And in the meantime? Karth's smile widened. You keep me under house arrest based on the word of a human you've never met? Yes. Marcus made a strangled sound. This is insane. You can't— I can. Kale's voice went flat. Final. And I am. Elder Karth, you're confined to your residence until a seer can verify your innocence. Refusal will be treated as an admission of guilt. You're making a mistake, Alpha. Then prove me wrong. They stared at each other. Old Wolf and young Alpha. Experience versus raw power. Karth inclined his head. As you wish. He walked out, slow, unhurried, like he'd already won. The door closed behind him. Marcus rounded on Kyle. You just declared war on the council. No, Kale said coldly. I declared war on whoever's been manipulating my pack. If that's Karth, he'll answer for it. If it's not— his gaze cut to Marcus. Then we'll find out who it is. Marcus's jaw worked, then he grabbed Bren's arm. We're leaving. Dad. Now. Bren looked at Lily, then at Sable. His mouth opened like he wanted to say something, apologize, explain, beg forgiveness, but nothing came out. Sable stared back at him, silent. After a moment, Bren dropped his gaze and let his father pull him toward the exit. Lily stayed. Kyle turned to her. You're sure about what you said? About Karth? Yes. Her voice was steady now, stronger. He came to me 3 weeks ago, at the diner where I work, said he knew someone important who needed a mate and that I'd be taken care of financially if I agreed. She wrapped her arms around herself. I thought it was weird, but I needed the money. My mom's sick, medical bills. So I said yes. He gave me tea, made me drink it every day for a week, and then Bren showed up and she shook her head. Felt wrong from the start. But Bren was so convinced, and I thought maybe I was just scared. Maybe I didn't understand how bonds worked. You don't, Kyle said, not unkindly. Because that wasn't a bond. That was coercion. Lily's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. You're a victim, Sable said quietly. She didn't know why she was defending the girl who'd destroyed her engagement. Maybe because Lily looked so small, so broken. You didn't do this. Karth did. Lily's eyes welled with fresh tears. Thank you. Kale pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm sending a car to take you home. You'll be safe.
but I need you to write down everything, every conversation with Karth, every detail you remember. Can you do that? Lily nodded. Good. Kale's expression softened fractionally. And Lily, whatever he promised you, I'll make sure you get it. Medical bills, all of it. You have my word. The girl's breath hitched. Why? Because you told the truth when it would have been easier to lie. Kale's gaze flicked to Sable. That takes guts. Lily left 10 minutes later, escorted by 2 of Kael's guards. Then it was just the 2 of them. Sable sank into one of the chairs, her legs giving out. Her mind was spinning, fragments of the last hour colliding and refusing to cohere into anything that made sense. Karth. Elder Karth. The wolf who'd presided over pack law for as long as she could remember, who'd been present at every major decision, every ritual, He was there, she said suddenly. Kale looked up. What? The night of the celebration, when Bren announced Lily. Sable's hands curled into fists. Karth didn't look surprised. He asked questions, verified the bond, like he already knew, because he did. Kale's jaw tightened. He orchestrated the whole thing. But why? Sable stood, pacing. Why would he do this? What does he gain from breaking my engagement? Kale was silent for a long moment. Too long. Sable stopped, turned. Kale, what aren't you telling me? He looked at her, and the expression on his face made her stomach drop. I think, he said slowly, that breaking your engagement was just the first step. First step to what? To isolating you, making you vulnerable, forcing you into a position where you'd need protection. Kale's eyes hardened. So someone could claim you. Sable's chest went cold. You think Karth wanted me for himself? No. Kale crossed to her, his movements careful, controlled. I think he wanted you dependent, desperate, so that when the right person came along... He stopped. Sable's breath caught. When you came along. Kyle didn't answer. You're saying Karth manipulated all of this so you'd claim me? Her voice rose. That doesn't make any sense. Why would he care who I'm mated to? Because you're not nobody, Sable. Kael's hands settled on her shoulders. Your mother was the daughter of the previous Alpha. That makes you a bastard, Sable finished bitterly. She wasn't his mate, she was his daughter. Kael's grip tightened. Which makes you pack royalty. Illegitimate, yes, but your bloodline still matters, especially to wolves who care about lineage. Sable jerked back. That's insane. I don't have a cent. You're still his granddaughter. And if someone wanted to legitimize a claim to Alpha status, bonding with you would strengthen it. You already are Alpha. Barely. Kale's expression went grim. I took the position 3 years ago when the old Alpha died. But there were challenges, wolves who thought I was too young, too aggressive, He stopped. Too new. My family doesn't have deep roots here. I'm Alpha because I was strong enough to take it, not because of bloodline. Sable's mind reeled. So Karth breaks my engagement, isolates me, and pushes me into your arms to what? Strengthen your claim? Make you harder to challenge? Yes. She shook her head. That's insane. Is it? Kale stepped closer. Think about it. The moment I claimed you, publicly, in front of the entire pack, what happened? Sable's throat tightened. They stopped questioning you. Exactly. Because bonding the granddaughter of the previous Alpha sends a message. Legitimacy. Continuity. The old bloodline tied to the new power. His jaw worked. Karth's been trying to stabilize the pack for years. And if he thought I was the best option for Alpha, he'd manipulate me to make sure we ended up together, Sable finished. The room tilted. She backed away from Kyle, her stomach churning, bile rising in her throat. So this was never about the bond, she said. It was about politics. No. Kyle reached for her. Sable, don't. She slapped his hand away. Don't touch me. The bond is real. How do I know that? Her voice cracked. How do I know any of this is real? You just said Karth's been manipulating everything to push us together. What if he manipulated the bond too? What if you're just... I'm not. Kale's eyes blazed. I felt the bond 7 years ago, long before Karth got involved, long before any of this political bullshit mattered.
Then why didn't you tell me? Sable was shouting now, tears burning. Why didn't you warn me? Why let me stand in that hall and get humiliated if you knew? I didn't know Karth was involved until tonight. But you suspected something was wrong with Bren's bond. Yes. And you didn't tell me. Kale's hands curled into fists. Would you have believed me? I don't know, but you didn't even try. Sable's chest heaved. You just waited, watched me fall apart, and then you swooped in like some goddamn hero and claimed me in front of everyone to protect you, to use me. The words tore out of her, just like everyone else. Kyle flinched, actually flinched. That's not... He stopped, breathed. I claimed you because I love you. Sable laughed, bitter, broken. You don't even know me. I've known you for 7 years. You've watched me for 7 years. That's not the same thing. She wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. And now I find out the only reason you claimed me was to legitimize your position. That's not why. Then what am I supposed to believe? Sable's voice dropped to a whisper. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I traded one manipulator for another. The words landed like a physical blow. Kael's expression went blank, carefully, meticulously blank. If that's what you think, he said quietly, then you're right. You don't know me at all. He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Sable stood alone in the empty council chamber, her chest hollow, her hands shaking, the bond screaming at her to go after him, to fix this, to take it back. She didn't move, because the worst part, the part that made her want to scream and break things and run until her legs gave out, was that she didn't know if she was wrong. She went back to the house, not because she wanted to, because she had nowhere else to go. Iris was waiting in the foyer when Sable walked in, her expression carefully neutral. The Alpha called, she said. He'll be staying at the pack house tonight. He wanted you to know you're safe here. The guards are doubled. Sable nodded numbly. He also said... Iris hesitated. He said if you want to leave, he won't stop you. The words hit like a gut punch. Sable made it to her room before the tears came. Collapsed on the bed and sobbed into the pillow, her body shaking, the bond twisting like a knife in her chest because Kael was miles away, and every instinct she had was screaming to go to him, to close the distance, to make it right. But she couldn't, because she didn't know what right even looked like anymore. Her phone buzzed, she ignored it, buzzed again, and again. Finally, she grabbed it, ready to throw the damn thing against the wall, and stopped. 3 messages, all from the same unknown number. You need to see this. Tonight. The Old Forest, Eastern Ridge, come alone, or don't come at all. Sable stared at the screen, her heart pounding. This was a trap, obviously. Whoever sent this wanted her isolated, vulnerable, away from Kael's protection. She should delete it, block the number, tell Kael. Instead, she stood, changed into dark clothes, grabbed her jacket, and walked out the front door. The Eastern Ridge was a 40-minute drive into pack territory, deep enough that the forest swallowed the moonlight and the silence pressed like a physical weight. Sable parked where the road ended, killed the engine, and sat there for a full minute, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel. This was stupid, reckless, everything Kael had warned her not to do. She got out anyway. The forest was alive with night sounds, owls, the rustle of small prey, the distant howl of a wolf on patrol. Sable followed the coordinates from the text, her phone's flashlight cutting a thin beam through the darkness. 20 minutes in, she found the clearing, and the person waiting for her. Bren. Sable stopped dead. What the hell are you doing here? He turned, and even in the dim light she could see how wrecked he looked. Eyes red-rimmed, hair disheveled, face pale and haggard. I needed to talk to you, he said. So you lured me into the woods? Are you insane? I didn't know how else... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. You won't answer my calls. Your mate won't let me near you. And I... His voice cracked. I needed you to know the truth. I already know the truth. Karth forced a fake bond. You fell for it. End of story. It's not. Bren took a step closer. Sable, I swear I didn't know. I felt the bond, or I thought I did. It was real to me. I wouldn't have... He stopped, his throat working. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Sable's voice was flat, cold. You stood in front of the entire pack and called me a mistake.
I know. Bren's hands curled into fists, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But you have to understand, when I saw Lily, it was like everything I thought I knew just shattered. The bond felt so real, so right, and I thought, you thought it gave you permission to throw me away. Sable's chest tightened. You didn't even fight it, Bren. You just accepted it, like I was disposable. You're not. Then why am I here? She stepped closer, anger rising hot and sharp. Why drag me out to the middle of nowhere to tell me things I already know? What do you want? Absolution? Forgiveness? Because I can't give you that. I don't want forgiveness. Bren's eyes burned. I want you to be careful. Sable froze. What? Kael. Bren's jaw tightened. He's not what you think. Don't. Sable's voice went hard. Don't you dare. He knew. Bren's words tumbled out in a rush. About Karth, about the manipulation. My father told me he's been investigating Karth for months, since before the engagement broke. He knew something was wrong, and he didn't stop it. Sable's stomach dropped. You're lying. I'm not. Ask him. Ask Kael why he didn't intervene when he suspected Karth was manipulating bonds. Ask him why he waited until the exact moment it benefited him to claim you. Because the bond is real. Is it? Bren stepped closer. Or is that just what he told you? Karth's not the only one who benefits from you two being mated, Sable. Kael gets legitimacy, power, a bloodline tie to the old alpha. And you, his voice dropped. You get trapped with a wolf who's been obsessed with you for years and finally found an excuse to make it happen. Sable's hands started shaking. Stop. I'm trying to protect you. No. She shoved him, hard. You're trying to salve your own guilt by making Kael look worse than you, but it won't work, because whatever Kael's done, whatever mistakes he's made, he's never abandoned me. He's never called me a mistake in front of 200 wolves, and he's never... Her voice cracked. He's never made me feel like I was worthless. Bren's face crumpled. Sable, we're done. She turned to leave. He's using you. Bren's voice rose, desperate. And when he's done, when you've served your purpose, he'll discard you just like I did. Maybe worse. Sable stopped, turned back, and looked at Bren, really looked at him, for the first time since that night in the hall. She saw the guilt, the regret, the fear, but beneath it all, jealousy. You don't get to do this, she said quietly. You don't get to destroy my life and then show up pretending to care. Whatever Kael is or isn't, that's my choice to make, not yours. Then make it. Bren's hand shook. But make it with your eyes open, because Karth's not working alone. And if Kael knew about the manipulation and didn't stop it, then he had a reason. Or he's been playing you from the start. The words hung between them, sharp and poisonous. Sable wanted to argue, wanted to defend Kael, to throw Bren's accusations back in his face, but a small, vicious part of her whispered, what if he's right? I'm leaving, she said. Sable, wait. She didn't. She walked back through the forest, her mind spinning, Bren's words looping endlessly. He knew. He waited. He's using you. By the time she reached the car, her hands were shaking so hard she could barely get the key in the ignition. She drove back toward the house on autopilot, her chest tight, the bond screaming at her because Kael was still miles away and the distance hurt, physically hurt, like something vital had been ripped out. Halfway there, her phone rang. Kael. She didn't answer. It rang again and again. Finally, she pulled over. Answered. Where are you? Kael's voice was rough, strained. Sable, where the hell are you? I went for a drive. Alone? At night? After everything... He stopped, breathed. You need to come back. Now. It's not safe. Why? The word came out sharp. Because Karth's still out there? Or because you don't trust me to make my own decisions? Silence. Then quietly, what happened? I saw Bren. Another silence, longer. What did he tell you? Kale's voice had gone flat, dangerous. That you knew about Karth, about the manipulation, that you've been investigating him for months and didn't stop it. Sable, is it true? She heard him breathe, heard the exact moment he decided whether to lie. Yes, he said. The word shattered something inside her. You knew, she whispered. You knew Karth was manipulating bonds and you let him destroy my engagement anyway. I didn't have proof. I couldn't act without, You could have warned me. Her voice broke. You could have told me to be careful, to watch for signs, anything. But you didn't. You waited. Until I was desperate enough to accept your claim. That's not... Then what is it? Sable's hands clenched around the phone. Explain it to me, KL. Explain how you watched me get humiliated, watched Bren walk away, and thought that was the right time to swoop in and claim me. Because I was running out of time. The answer was so blunt it knocked the breath from her lungs. What? Karth wasn't just breaking your engagement, Kael said, his voice rough. He was setting you up to be claimed by someone else, someone he could control. I had maybe hours before that happened. So yes, I used the situation. I claimed you when you were vulnerable, because the alternative was losing you to a wolf who would have broken you completely. Sable's vision blurred. Who? I don't know yet, but I will. A pause. Sable, I know how this looks. I know you think I manipulated you, and maybe I did. Maybe I should have told you everything from the start, but I can't. His voice cracked. I can't regret claiming you because it kept you safe, and I'd do it again. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know if I can trust you, she whispered. I know. I don't know if any of this is real. It is. Kael's voice dropped, raw and aching. The bond is real. What I feel for you is real. Everything else. The politics, the manipulation, the timing, that's all bullshit. But what's between us? That's the only true thing in this entire mess. Sable closed her eyes. Come home, Kael said quietly. Please, let me explain. I need time. You don't have it. His tone shifted, urgent. Karth's under house arrest, but that doesn't mean he's powerless. And if he realizes you're alone, unprotected, I'm not coming back tonight. Silence. Then, so soft she almost didn't hear it. Okay. The word felt like an ending. Sable hung up, sat there in the dark, the bond screaming, her chest hollow. She should go back. She knew that. Should let Kael explain, should hear him out, should give him a chance to prove the bond was real. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not when her entire world had been built on lies, and she didn't know which parts were true anymore. She started the car, pulled back onto the road, and drove toward the only place she could think of. The ocean. Awesome. The cliffs overlooked the sea, a sheer drop to black water and jagged rocks below. Sable's mother had loved this place, had brought her here as a child back when things were simple and the pack felt like home instead of a cage. Her mother had died here. Jumped, some said. Slipped, others claimed. Sable had never known which. Had never wanted to. She parked near the edge, got out, and walked to the cliff face. The wind whipped her hair, cold and sharp, carrying the salt spray and the crash of waves against stone. She stood there for a long time, staring at the dark water below, her mind blank and buzzing all at once. Behind her, footsteps crunched on gravel. Sable spun, her heart lurching. Karth stepped out of the darkness. Hello, Sable, he said calmly. She backed toward the cliff edge, her pulse racing. How did You're supposed to be under house arrest. I'm an elder. I've been navigating pack politics for 40 years. Karth smiled, thin, cold. Did you really think Kael could hold me with a couple of guards? Stay back. Or what? He took another step closer. You'll call your mate? He's miles away. By the time he gets here, what do you want? Karth stopped, tilted his head. To talk, that's all. About what? About the choices you are about to make. His gaze sharpened. You're standing at a crossroads, Sable, and the path you choose tonight will determine everything. I'm not choosing anything with you. Aren't you? Karth's smile widened. You came here, alone, in the middle of the night, to the place where your mother died. That's not coincidence, that's desperation.
Sable's hands curled into fists. Get to the point. The point, Karth said, is that Kyle Thornridge is not your savior. He's a young, ambitious alpha who saw an opportunity to legitimize his claim to power by bonding the granddaughter of his predecessor. You're a political tool, nothing more. You're the one who manipulated Bren's bond. You don't get to lecture me about manipulation. I did what was necessary. Karth's expression didn't change. Bren was weak, unsuitable. You would have wasted your potential on a wolf who couldn't protect you. I simply expedited the inevitable by destroying my life, by giving you a choice. Karth stepped closer. You could have walked away, refused Kael's claim. But you didn't, because deep down, you knew Bren was never enough. Sable's chest tightened. This conversation is over. Is it? Karth's eyes gleamed. Because I'm offering you something Kyle never will. The truth. I don't want your truth. Then you'll die ignorant. His voice dropped. The bond between you and Kyle, it's real. I'll grant you that. But it's not what you think. Kyle's been waiting for you since you were 16, watching, obsessing. Do you know why? Because he saved my life. Because your mother was his father's fated mate. The world stopped. Sable's breath caught, her vision narrowing. What? Your mother, Kyle's father. They were fated mates. Karth's smile turned vicious. But she rejected the bond, chose the old alpha instead. Had you. And Kyle's father, he paused. He never recovered, died broken and alone. And Kyle, Karth laughed softly. Kyle spent his entire life trying to rewrite that story, to claim what his father couldn't. You. Sable's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, the gravel biting through her jeans, her chest hollow. You're lying, she whispered. Am I? Karth crouched in front of her. Ask him. Ask Kyle if his father was bonded to your mother. Ask him if that's why he pulled you out of the fire. Why he's been watching you for years. Why he claimed you the second he had an excuse. His voice dropped to a murmur. You're not his mate, Sable. You're his obsession. The one thing he can take that his father couldn't. Sable couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The bond, her mother, Kyle's father. It couldn't be true. But what if it was? I'm giving you a choice, Karth said softly. Walk away, now, tonight. I'll protect you, hide you, give you a life away from all of this. Or, he gestured toward the cliff edge. Stay, let Kyle consume you the way this pack consumed your mother, and end up exactly like her. Sable stared at the edge, at the black water below, at the place her mother had died. Behind her, tires screeched. A car door slammed. Sable! Kael's voice, raw and desperate. She turned. He was running toward her, his face pale, his eyes wild. And behind him, Bren, Marcus, a dozen wolves pouring out of vehicles surrounding the clearing. Karth stood slowly, smiled. Too late, Alpha, he said. And before anyone could move, he grabbed Sable by the arm and pulled her backward, toward the cliff edge. Sable screamed. Kyle lunged. And the world tilted as Karth dragged her over. Sable didn't fall. Kael caught her. His hand locked around her wrist the instant Karth pulled her over the edge, his body slamming into the rocky ground, his other hand scrabbling for purchase on the cliff face as momentum tried to drag them both into the black water below. Sable screamed, her legs dangling over nothing, the wind howling around them, salt spray stinging her eyes. I've got you, Kael gritted out, his voice strained, his grip iron tight, even as his fingers began to slip. Don't let go. Above them, Karth staggered back from the edge, his expression twisted with rage. Grab him! Marcus's voice sharp with command. Wolves surged forward. Bren, two of Kyle's guards, others Sable didn't recognize, but Karth was already moving. His form blurred, bones cracking, fur erupting as he shifted mid-stride. The massive gray wolf that emerged was larger than any Sable had ever seen, his eyes gleaming with feral intelligence. He lunged at the nearest guard, jaws snapping, and the wolf went down in a spray of blood. Get her up! Bren shouted, dropping to his knees beside Kyle. He grabbed Sable's other arm, and together they hauled her back over the edge, her body scraping against rock, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The second her feet hit solid ground, Kyle released her and spun toward Karth. The old wolf was surrounded now. 8 wolves in a loose circle, all shifted or half-shifted, teeth bared, growls rumbling through the night. But Karth didn't look afraid. He looked exhilarated. "You can't win this," Kyle said, his voice dropping to a growl as his own wolf rose to the surface, his eyes flaring silver. "Stand down!" Karth's wolf snarled, the sound resonating deep in Sable's chest. Then he spoke, his voice rough, distorted by the shift, but unmistakably his. "You think you've won? You think claiming her changes anything?" "It's over," Kyle said. "Over?" Karth laughed, the sound grating and wrong. "It hasn't even begun." He lunged, not at Kyle, at Sable. Everything happened too fast. Kale roared, his shift exploding through him in a cascade of power that made the air crackle. His massive black wolf intercepted Karth mid-leap, their bodies colliding with a crack like thunder. They hit the ground in a tangle of fur and fangs, rolling dangerously close to the cliff edge. The other wolves closed in, but Karth was faster than he had any right to be. He twisted, his jaws clamping down on one guard's shoulder, ripping through muscle and sinew before throwing the wolf aside. Another lunged, and Karth's claws raked across his face, opening 3 deep gashes that bled black in the moonlight. Kale slammed into him again, his teeth finding purchase on Karth's neck, and they went over, both of them, over the edge. "No!" Sable's scream tore from her throat. She ran to the cliff, dropped to her stomach, and looked down. 20 feet below, a narrow ledge jutted out from the rock face. Kyle clung to it, his wolf form half shifted back to human, blood streaming from a gash on his temple, and beneath him, hanging by one clawed hand, Karth, still in wolf form, still snarling. "Let go!" Kale growled, his voice barely human. "It's over." "Not yet." Karth's eyes burned. "You want to know the truth, Alpha? You want to know why I did this? I don't care." "You should." Karth's grip slipped fractionally, his claws scraping against stone. "Because your father didn't just love her mother. He was obsessed with her, watched her for years, waited for her to choose him, and when she didn't, when she picked the old Alpha instead, he laughed, wet and broken. He tried to force the bond, used magic, dark magic, the same kind I used on Bren." Kale went rigid. "You're lying," he said. "Am I?" Blood dripped from Karth's muzzle. "Ask yourself why the old Alpha banished your father, why he was exiled and died alone in the wilderness. It wasn't politics, boy. It was punishment for trying to steal his mate." Sable's chest constricted, her mind reeling. "And you," Karth's gaze shifted to her, vicious and triumphant, "you're the daughter of the woman who destroyed him. The bloodline that should have been his. So, yes, Kyle claimed you, but not because of fate, because of obsession, because he's his father's son, and he'll do anything—" His voice rose. "Anything to rewrite what his father couldn't have." "Shut up," Kale snarled. "Make me!" Kale's hand tightened around the ledge. For a moment, Sable thought he'd let Karth fall, thought he'd release his grip and watch the old wolf plummet to the rocks below. But he didn't. "Bren!" Kale's voice cracked like a whip. "Get rope! Now!" Bren was already moving, running back to one of the vehicles. Karth laughed again. "Still playing hero? Even after everything I've told you?" "You're going to stand trial," Kale said through gritted teeth. "You're going to answer for what you've done, and then you're going to rot in a cell for the rest of your miserable life." "Noble," Karth's eyes gleamed, but futile. His other hand shot up, claws extended, and slashed across Kyle's arm. Kale's grip faltered, and Karth let go. He fell. Not screaming, not fighting, just falling. His body hit the rocks below with a sound that made Sable's stomach lurch. The waves swallowed him immediately, dragging him under, and within seconds there was nothing but foam and black water. Kyle hung there, his arm bleeding, his breathing harsh. "Kyle!" Sable reached down, her hand extended. "Take my hand." He looked up at her, and the expression on his face made her chest crack open. Grief, raw and absolute. "I can't," he said hoarsely. "Yes, you can. Grab my hand." He was right. Kale's voice broke. "About my father, about why I claimed you, about all of it. I don't care." Sable's voice shook.
I don't care about your father or the past or any of that. I care about you, right now. So take my goddamn hand before you fall. Sable, now Kael. He stared at her. Then slowly he reached up. His hand locked around hers. Sable pulled, her muscles screaming, her body braced against the cliff edge. Bren appeared beside her, grabbing Kael's other arm, and together they hauled him back over the edge. Kael collapsed on the ground, his chest heaving, blood soaking through his shirt. Sable dropped beside him, her hand shaking as she pressed against the wound on his arm. "You're an idiot," she said, her voice thick with tears. "You could have died." "I know." Kael's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek. "But you're safe. That's all that matters." "Don't!" She shoved his hand away. "Don't you dare act like this is over. You heard what Karth said about your father, about why you claimed me. It's true." Kael's eyes were dull, defeated. All of it. "I don't believe that." "You should." He sat up slowly, wincing. "My father was obsessed with your mother, tried to force a bond using magic he shouldn't have touched. And when it didn't work, when she rejected him anyway, he lost his mind. The old Alpha exiled him to protect her, to protect you." Sable's throat closed. "And you?" "I'm his son." Kael's jaw tightened. "I grew up hearing stories about the woman who destroyed him, the mate who got away. And then I saw you, 16 years old, trapped in a burning building, and the bond snapped into place so hard I thought it would kill me." He looked away. "I told myself it was different, that what I felt was real. But Karth's right. How do I know the bond isn't just my father's obsession passed down? How do I know I'm not repeating his mistakes? Because you're not him." Sable grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "You saved me. You protected me. You've done nothing but put my safety first since the moment you claimed me. That's not obsession. That's—" Her voice cracked. "That's love." Kael's eyes searched hers. "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Tears streamed down her face. "Because I feel it too. The bond. The pull. Everything you've described, I feel it. And it's not fake. It's not magic. It's real." "Sable, I don't care about your father." Her hands tightened on his face. "I don't care about bloodlines or politics or what Karth wanted. I care about you, the wolf who's been watching over me for 7 years, the alpha who claimed me when I had nothing, the man who just risked his life to save mine." She leaned closer, her forehead pressing against his. "That's who you are. Not your father, not his mistakes. You." Kael's breath hitched. Then he kissed her, hard, desperate. His hand sliding into her hair, his mouth hot and demanding, the bond roaring to life between them like a wildfire finally unleashed. Sable kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and anger and confusion of the last few days pouring into it, transforming into something raw and fierce and undeniable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael's eyes were burning silver. "I love you," he said hoarsely. "I've loved you since the moment I pulled you out of that fire, and I'll love you until the day I die." "I know." Sable's hands trembled against his face. "I love you too." The bond pulsed, warm and steady, no longer a source of confusion, but an anchor. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. Marcus stood a few feet away, his expression carefully neutral. "We need to move. Karth's body is gone," Kael finished, his voice flat. He stood slowly, pulling Sable up with him. "The ocean took him. We won't find it. Then we report what happened. Let the council decide how to handle the aftermath." "There's nothing to decide." Kael's jaw tightened. "Karth manipulated bonds, attacked pack members, and tried to kill my mate. The evidence is clear." "Evidence you'll need to present," Marcus said carefully, "and explain, including why you didn't act sooner when you suspected his involvement." Kael's eyes flashed. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I'm saying the pack will have questions." Marcus's gaze shifted to Sable. "About the timing of your claim, about your father's history with her mother, about whether any of this was legitimate." "The bond is legitimate," Kael growled. "Then prove it." Marcus's expression hardened. "At the next full moon, in front of the entire pack, let them see the bond for themselves. If it's real,
If it's not just obsession or politics or your father's legacy, then no one can question it. Sable's stomach dropped. The full moon was 3 days away. Fine, Kael said. We'll do it. Marcus nodded. And Sable... He paused. Bren told me about the baby. Sable's blood turned to ice. Kael's hand tightened on hers, a warning to stay silent. What baby? He asked, his voice dangerously calm. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. The one she's carrying, Bren's child. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sable couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her mind was screaming at her to deny it, to lie, to do anything except stand there frozen while her entire world collapsed. Is that true? Kael's voice was so quiet it terrified her. She looked up at him, saw the betrayal already forming in his eyes. Yes, she whispered. Kael's hand dropped from hers. He stepped back, and the bond that had been warm and steady and real, went cold. How far along? His voice was flat, emotionless. 10 weeks. So when I claimed you, I was already pregnant. Sable's voice broke. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how, and I was scared. Scared of what? Kael's eyes blazed. That I'd reject you? That I wouldn't want you if you came with another wolf's child? Yes. So you lied. I didn't. You let me claim you. Let me tell the entire pack you were mine. Let me fight for you. Bleed for you. His voice cracked. And you were carrying his child the whole time. It doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Kael's hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what this looks like? What the pack will say when they find out? I don't care what they say. Well, I do. Kael's voice rose. Because I'm the alpha. And if they think I was manipulated into claiming a pregnant wolf, if they think I was too blinded by obsession to see the truth, they'll challenge me. They'll tear this pack apart. Then we'll deal with it, Sable said desperately. Together. There is no together. Kael's expression went cold. Hard. Not anymore. You don't mean that, don't I? He stepped closer and Sable flinched from the ice in his eyes. You lied to me about something that affects everything, and now I have to stand in front of the pack in 3 days and claim a bond that might not even be real. It is real. Is it? Kael's voice dropped to a growl. Or is it just what we wanted to believe? Because right now, all I see is my father's mistake repeated. A woman I can't have, a bond built on lies, and an obsession that's going to destroy me. Kael, please, go back to the house, he said flatly. Pack your things. I'll arrange for you to stay somewhere safe until the full moon. After that, he turned away. After that, we'll see if there's anything left to salvage. You're just going to walk away? Sable's voice rose, cracking. After everything you said, everything we just went through, you're going to abandon me because I made one mistake? It's not one mistake. Kael looked back over his shoulder, his eyes dead. It's a pattern. Bren, me. You keep choosing wolves who can't give you what you need, and I... His voice broke. I can't be another one. He walked away. Sable stood there, the wind whipping around her, the ocean crashing below, her chest hollow. Bren approached slowly, his expression unreadable. I'll drive you back. Why did you tell him? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why did you tell Marcus about the baby? Because he deserved to know. Bren's jaw tightened. And because I was tired of watching you destroy yourself with secrets. You destroyed me, Sable said. You and your father. You took the one thing I had left and... The baby's mine, Bren interrupted. And I'm not walking away from it. Or you. Sable stared at him. What? You heard me? Bren stepped closer. Kael's right. The pack will tear this apart. But if I step up, if I acknowledge the child, claim responsibility... I don't want your responsibility. Too bad. Bren's expression hardened. Because whether you like it or not, we made this baby together. And I'm not letting you face the fallout alone. I have Kael... Do you? Bren gestured toward where Kael had disappeared. Because from where I'm standing, he just walked away. Sable's hands shook. He'll come back. Maybe. Bren's voice softened. But if he doesn't, If the bond breaks or the pack rejects you or everything falls apart, you'll still have me, and the baby will have a father. I don't love you. I know. Bren's smile was sad. But I love you, still, and that has to count for something. Sable wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, wanted to run after Kyle and beg him to understand. But she was so tired. And the baby, Goddess, the baby, was a weight she couldn't carry alone anymore. Take me back to the house, she said finally. Bren nodded. They walked to his car in silence, the ocean roaring behind them, the night pressing cold and dark. And as they drove away, Sable looked back at the cliff one last time. The place where her mother had died. The place where Karth had fallen. The place where everything had shattered beyond repair. She pressed her hand against her stomach and made a decision. If Kyle wouldn't fight for them, for her, for the baby, for the bond, then she would. The house was dark when they arrived. Iris met them at the door, her expression tight with worry. The Alpha called. He said you'd be staying elsewhere. I'm staying here, Sable said. But this is my home. Sable's voice was steel. I'm the Alpha's mate, and I'm not leaving. Iris hesitated, then nodded. As you wish, madame. Bren stayed by the car, watching. You don't have to do this, he called. Yes, I do. Sable turned to face him. Thank you for the ride, but I need to handle this myself. And the baby? Is mine. Her hand pressed against her stomach. And I'll protect it, no matter what. Bren's expression shifted, something between respect and regret. If you need me, I know where to find you. He drove away. Sable walked inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. The bond was still there, faint, cold, but present, which meant Kyle hadn't severed it. Not yet. She had 3 days. 3 days to prove the bond was real, to convince the pack, to show Kyle that what they had was worth fighting for. 3 days to save everything, or lose it all. Boy, the next 2 days passed in a blur. Sable barely slept, barely ate. She spent hours pacing the house, the bond a constant ache in her chest as Kyle stayed away. He was at the pack house, Iris reported, dealing with the aftermath of Karth's death, preparing for the full moon trial. He didn't call, didn't visit, didn't acknowledge her existence beyond a terse message through Iris. Stay safe, don't leave the house. On the second night, Sable stood in front of the mirror in her room and lifted her shirt. The smallest curve had appeared, barely visible. But there, 10 weeks, almost 3 months, she had maybe 6 weeks left before it became obvious. 6 weeks before the pack would know, before Kyle would have to explain, before everything came crashing down. A knock at the door made her drop her shirt. Come in, she called. Iris entered, carrying a garment bag. For tomorrow night, the full moon ceremony. Sable took it, unzipped it. Inside was a dress. White, simple, beautiful. The kind you wore when you were about to be judged. The Alpha sent it, Iris said quietly. Sable's chest tightened. Did he say anything else? Only that you should wear it. Iris paused. And that he'll see you tomorrow. That's it? That's it. Sable nodded numbly. Iris left. Sable hung the dress in the closet and stared at it. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, she'd stand in front of the entire pack. Let them see the bond. Let them judge whether it was real. And if they decided it wasn't, if Kyle decided it wasn't, she'd lose everything. The bond, the baby's protection, her place in the pack, everything. Sable pressed her hand against her stomach again. I won't let that happen, she whispered. I promise. The full moon rose blood red over the packlands. Sable stood in her room, dressed in the white gown, her hair loose, her hands shaking. Outside, she could hear them gathering. Hundreds of wolves, the entire pack, summoned to witness the trial. Iris knocked softly. It's time. Sable followed her downstairs through the house, out onto the wide stone terrace that overlooked the valley. The pack was assembled below. A sea of faces, all turned toward her. And at the center, standing on a raised platform, Kyle. He wore all black. His expression was carved from stone. His eyes, silver in the moonlight, locked onto hers as she descended the steps. The bond flared, sharp, painful, desperate. Sable walked toward him, her chin high, her spine straight, even as her heart hammered. She reached the platform, climbed the steps, stood beside him. Kale didn't look at her. Elder Marcus stepped forward. He'd taken Karth's place as head of the council. His voice rang out over the assembled wolves. "We gather tonight to witness the truth of a bond. Alpha Kale Thornridge has claimed Sable Ardent as his fated mate. Tonight, under the full moon, the bond will be tested. If it is true, if the goddess has woven their souls together, the pack will witness it. If not," he paused, "the claim will be dissolved." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus turned to Kyle. "Do you accept this trial?" "I do," Kyle said. "And you, Sable Ardent?" Sable's throat was dry. "I do." "Then let the trial begin." Marcus raised his hands, and the pack began to chant, low, rhythmic, the ancient words that called the moon's judgment. The bond between Sable and Kyle began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, a silver thread connecting them, visible to every wolf present. The chanting grew louder. The bond pulsed, growing stronger, and Sable gasped as the connection deepened, flooding her with sensation. Kyle's emotions, raw and overwhelming, fear, doubt, and beneath it all, love. Desperate, aching, undeniable love. Her eyes snapped to his. Kyle was staring at her now, his expression cracking. "I'm sorry," he said, so quietly only she could hear. "For walking away. For doubting you. For—" "Stop," Sable whispered. "Just stop." She reached for his hand. Their fingers intertwined, and the bond exploded. Light flooded the platform, so bright the crowd gasped, shielding their eyes. The silver thread between them blazed like lightning, and Sable felt it. The goddess's approval, the absolute certainty that this was real, that they were meant to be, that nothing, not lies, not politics, not the past, could break what had been forged. The light faded. The pack stood in awed silence. Marcus's voice rang out. "The bond is true." Cheers erupted. Sable swayed, her legs weak, and Kyle caught her, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you," he murmured. "Always." But before she could respond, a scream cut through the celebration. The pack scattered as a figure emerged from the tree line. Karth, alive, soaked, bleeding, his wolf form half shifted, his eyes burning with madness. "It's not over," he snarled, and he lunged, straight for Sable. Kale threw himself between them, his shift exploding, and the two wolves collided midair in a tangle of teeth and claws and pure. They collided in a storm of fangs and fury. Kale's black wolf slammed into Karth with enough force to crack bone, the impact sending both of them tumbling across the stone platform. The pack scattered, wolves shouting, some shifting instinctively, others frozen in shock as the two massive forms tore at each other with savage precision. Sable stumbled backward, her hands catching the edge of the platform railing, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The bond screamed in her chest, terror and rage pouring through it in equal measure as Kyle's wolf fought with a brutality she'd never seen. Karth was bigger than he should have been. Older, yes, but the ocean should have weakened him, should have left him broken and half drowned. Instead, he moved like something possessed, his jaws snapping inches from Kyle's throat, his claws raking deep furrows across Kyle's shoulder. Blood spattered the white stone. Kale's wolf snarled, twisting beneath Karth's weight, his hind legs kicking out hard enough to send the gray wolf flying. Karth hit the ground and rolled, already lunging again before his body stopped moving. "Stop him!" Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "Someone stop this!" "No!" Sable's voice was hoarse but absolute. "This is between them." Marcus stared at her. "He'll kill the Alpha." "He won't." Sable's hands curled into fists, the bond thrumming with certainty. "Kyle won't let him." The words had barely left her mouth when Kyle's wolf lunged, catching Karth by the throat. They went down together, rolling dangerously close to the platform's edge, and for a terrifying moment Sable thought they'd both go over. But Kyle's claws found purchase. He wrenched Karth sideways, slamming him into the stone with enough force to crack it, his jaws locked around the older wolf's neck. Karth went still. Not dead, but pinned, defeated. Kyle's wolf stood over him, breathing hard, blood dripping from a dozen wounds, his silver eyes blazing with barely controlled violence. The pack was silent. Then, slowly, Karth began to shift back. His bones cracked and reformed, fur receding, until the old man lay beneath Kael's wolf, his chest heaving, his face twisted with something between rage and resignation. "Do it," Karth rasped. "Kill me. That's what you want, isn't it?" Kael's wolf didn't move. "You're just like your father," Karth continued, his voice wet with blood. "Obsessed, blinded by a bond you can't control. You think killing me changes anything? You think it makes you better than him?" Kael's jaws tightened. "Go ahead," Karth whispered. "Prove me right." For 5 endless seconds, no one breathed. Then Kael shifted. The change rippled through him fast and violent, his human form emerging bloodied and shaking, his hand still locked around Karth's throat. "You're wrong," Kael said quietly. His voice was rough, barely controlled but steady. "I'm nothing like my father, because I know when to stop." He released Karth, stood, stepped back. "Marcus," Kael said without looking away from the broken wolf at his feet, "take him into custody. Formal charges. Bond manipulation, attempted murder, treason against the pack. He'll stand trial under pack law." Marcus moved forward immediately, 2 guards flanking him, their hands locking around Karth's arms as they hauled him upright. Karth laughed, wet, broken. "You think a trial matters? You think the pack will believe you over me? I've served them for 40 years. And you betrayed them," Kael interrupted, his voice cutting like steel. "You manipulated bonds for personal gain. You tried to kill your alpha's mate, and you did it all while hiding behind decades of service." He stepped closer, his eyes burning. "The pack will believe the evidence, and they'll watch you answer for every crime." Karth's expression twisted. "She'll destroy you, just like her mother destroyed your father. It's in her blood." Kael's fist connected with Karth's jaw before anyone could react. The old wolf's head snapped back, blood spraying, and he collapsed into the guard's arms, unconscious. "Get him out of my sight," Kael said. They dragged him away. The pack stood in stunned silence, hundreds of eyes fixed on their alpha, waiting. Kael turned to face them. His chest was heaving, blood streaming from the wounds on his shoulder and side, his expression carved from exhausted fury. But he stood tall, unbroken. "What you witnessed tonight," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled wolves, "was the work of a wolf who forgot what it means to serve this pack, who put personal ambition above honor, above truth." He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. Karth manipulated bonds. He forced false connections to break real ones. And he did it because he believed he knew better than the goddess herself. A murmur rippled through the pack. "But the bond between Sable Ardent and myself is not false," Kael continued. "You saw it, tonight, under the full moon. The goddess herself confirmed it." His voice hardened. "And anyone who questions that, anyone who believes the lies Karth spread, can challenge me directly, right now." Silence. No one moved. "Good." Kael's jaw tightened. "Then it settled. Sable Ardent is my mate, my equal, and she will be treated with the respect and protection that position demands. Anyone who threatens her threatens me, and I will respond accordingly." The pack absorbed this. Then, slowly, wolves began to bow, one by one, heads lowering in acknowledgement, in acceptance. Sable watched it happen, her throat tight, her chest aching. Kael turned to her, extended his hand. She took it. The bond flared warm and bright, and together they faced the pack as the moon burned overhead and the night settled into something resembling peace. The house was quiet when they finally returned. Iris had prepared the master bedroom, Kael's room, though Sable had never been inside it before. She stood in the doorway now, watching as he moved stiffly toward the bathroom, his wound still bleeding despite the partial healing his wolf had already managed. "Sit," she said. Kael paused, looked back at her. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding all over the floor. Sit." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Yes, ma'am." He sank onto the edge of the massive bed, wincing as the movement pulled at torn muscle. Sable crossed to the bathroom, found the first aid kit Iris had left out, and returned with supplies. She worked in silence, cleaning the wounds on his shoulder first, 3 deep gashes that would scar even with accelerated healing. Kyle watched her, his silver eyes tracking every movement, but he didn't speak. You should have killed him, Sable said finally. No. He tried to murder me. Twice. I know. Kale's hand caught hers, stilling her movements. But killing him would have made me exactly what he said I was, my father's son. A wolf who lets obsession dictate his choices. It wouldn't have been obsession, Sable said quietly. It would have been justice. Maybe. Kale's thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I needed to prove to myself, to the pack, to you, that I'm not driven by the past, that what I feel for you isn't just my father's mistakes repeated. His voice dropped. I needed to choose mercy, even when every instinct I had was screaming for his blood. Sable's eyes burned. You're nothing like your father. How do you know? The question was raw, vulnerable. You didn't know him. You don't know what he was capable of. I know you. Sable set down the bandages, her hands framing Kale's face. I know the wolf who pulled me out of a fire when he was barely more than a kid himself, who watched over me for 7 years without asking for anything in return, who claimed me when I had nothing, protected me when I had no one, and fought for me even when I lied to him. Her voice cracked. That's not obsession, Kale. That's love. Kale's throat worked. I walked away from you. When you told me about the baby, You were hurt, Sable interrupted, and scared, and you had every right to be. I should have told you from the beginning. I should have trusted you with the truth instead of hiding it, because I was terrified you'd reject me. She leaned closer, her forehead pressing against his. But you came back. You fought for me. For us. And that's what matters. The baby... Kale's voice was rough. Sable, the pack knows now. Marcus made sure of that. And when it's born, when they see it's not mine, then we'll deal with it. Sable's hands tightened on his face. Together. The way we should have been doing from the start. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, his hand moved to her stomach, pressed gently against the small curve that had started to show. It's yours, he said quietly, which makes it mine. And anyone who says otherwise can answer to me. Sable's breath caught. You mean that? Every word. Kale's eyes met hers. I don't care whose blood runs through this child's veins. You're carrying it. You're protecting it. And His voice broke. I'm going to protect both of you for the rest of my life. The tears came then. Sable couldn't stop them. They streamed down her face as Kale pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her, the bond humming warm and steady and absolutely certain. I love you, she whispered against his skin. I know. Kale's hand slid into her hair. I've always known. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, breathing together, letting the bond settle into something deeper than attraction or instinct. Trust. Real, hard-won trust. When they finally pulled apart, Kale's wounds had stopped bleeding. Sable finished bandaging them anyway, her movements gentle, careful. What happens now? She asked. Now? Kale caught her hand, pulling her down beside him on the bed. Now we sleep. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to explain a 3-month-old pregnancy to a pack that watched us bond tonight. He smiled, tired but genuine. And then we deal with whatever comes next. Together. Together, Sable echoed. She curled into his side, her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, she felt safe. And as sleep pulled her under, the bond warm and constant, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Morning came soft and golden. Sable woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Kale's arms still wrapped around her waist, his breathing deep and even. She lay there for a moment, just watching him sleep, cataloging the way his face looked younger without the weight of responsibility etched into every line. The bond pulsed gently between them, content, settled, real. She pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the small curve, and let herself imagine it. A child, half hers, half Bren's by blood, but Kale's in every way that mattered. A family. The thought terrified her, but it also filled her with something fierce and protective and entirely new. Kael's eyes opened, silver in the morning light. He looked at her for a moment, then down at her hand on her stomach. How far along? He asked quietly. Almost 11 weeks now. So we have about 5 months before
everyone sees. Sable bit her lip. Kael, if you're not ready, if this is too much, it's not. Kael's hand covered hers, pressing gently against the curve. I told you last night, this baby is yours, which makes it mine. And I don't say things I don't mean. The pack will deal with it. Kael's jaw set. We'll tell them the truth, that you were pregnant when I claimed you, that I knew and claimed you anyway because the bond is real and nothing else matters. They'll call you weak. Say you were manipulated. Let them. Kael's eyes hardened. I'm the alpha because I'm strong enough to make the hard choices. And choosing you, choosing this family, is the easiest choice I've ever made. Sable's throat closed. I don't deserve you. You're wrong. Kael pulled her closer, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was soft and sure and full of promise. You deserve everything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. The bond flared, warm and bright. When they finally broke apart, Sable was smiling. So what's the plan? The plan, Kael said, sitting up and stretching carefully, is breakfast. Then we deal with Karth's trial. Then, he paused. Then we figure out what to do about Bren. Sable's stomach dropped. What about him? He's the biological father. He has rights, or he will if he chooses to claim them. Kael's expression was carefully neutral. We need to talk to him, figure out what he wants, what role he expects to play. I don't want him involved, Sable said immediately. I know. Kael's hand found hers. But running from this won't make it go away. We face it, we deal with it, and we decide together what's best for the baby. Sable wanted to argue, wanted to say Bren had forfeited his rights when he'd abandoned her. But she knew Kael was right. They couldn't build a life on lies and secrets. Not anymore. Okay, she said finally. We'll talk to him. Kael nodded. Then he stood, pulled on a shirt, and extended his hand. Come on, let's eat before the world falls apart again. Sable took his hand and let him pull her up. And together, they faced the morning. Karth's trial was set for 3 days later. In the interim, the pack buzzed with speculation and rumor. Sable caught fragments of it whenever she ventured out, whispers about Karth's manipulation, about the bond trial, about the alpha's pregnant mate, and whether the child was truly his. She learned to ignore it, learned to lift her chin and meet their eyes and dare them to say something to her face. Most didn't. Kael's presence at her side helped. He barely left her alone, his hand always finding hers, his wolf constantly aware of threats. Protective to the point of obsession. But it didn't feel like obsession. It felt like devotion. On the second day, they met with Bren. He came to the house at Kael's request, looking haggard and hollow-eyed, his usual confidence stripped away. Sable watched him enter the sitting room, her hands folded in her lap, her expression carefully neutral. Kael sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. A statement. You wanted to talk, Bren said, his voice rough. He didn't sit, just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, looking anywhere but at Sable. About the baby, Kael said evenly. You're the biological father. That gives you certain rights. But Sable and I need to know what you want, what role you expect to play in this child's life. Bren was silent for a long moment. Then he finally looked at Sable, and the pain in his eyes was raw. I don't know, he said hoarsely. I thought, when I found out you were pregnant, I thought it meant we had a chance, that maybe we could fix things. He stopped, his throat working. But you chose him, and I... His voice cracked. I don't know where that leaves me. It leaves you as the biological father, Sable said quietly. Nothing more, nothing less. Bren flinched. I don't love you, Bren, Sable continued, her voice steady even as her chest ached. I probably never did. Not the way I should have. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to see it before we got engaged, before we created a life together. She paused. But that baby deserves better than parents who are together out of obligation. It deserves to be raised by people who love it, who want it. And you think Kael... Bren's jaw tightened. You think he can love a child that's mine? I know he can, Sable said, because he already does. Kael's hand found hers, squeezing gently. Bren stared at them. Then he sank into a chair, his head dropping into his hands. I don't want to be shut out, he said finally. I don't want to be erased, but I also don't... He stopped. I don't want to make this harder for you, for the baby. Then we'll figure it out, Kael said. Slowly, carefully. We'll give the child the truth when they're old enough to understand, and we'll let them decide what relationship they want with you. And until then, you respect our boundaries, Kael said. You don't interfere with how we raise them. You don't question our decisions. And you sure as hell don't use this child as a weapon against Sable or our bond. Bren's head came up. I would never... You already did, Kael interrupted, his voice going hard. When you told your father about the pregnancy. When you tried to use it to drive a wedge between us. So yes, boundaries, clear ones, or you get nothing. The room went silent. Bren looked at Sable. Is that what you want? Yes, she said. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then that's what we'll do. He stood, moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. For what it's worth, he said, without turning back, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not being strong enough. For hurting you. For... His voice broke. For not being what you needed. I know, Sable said quietly. Bren left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Sable let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Kael's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her against his side. You okay? He asked. I don't know. Sable's voice was thick. I think so. Maybe. That's good enough. Kael pressed a kiss to her temple. One day at a time. One day at a time, Sable echoed. They sat there in the quiet, the bond humming steady, and for the first time since this entire nightmare began, Sable felt like maybe, just maybe, they'd found solid ground. Karth's trial was brutal. He stood in chains before the assembled pack, his expression defiant, his eyes burning with unrepentant fury. The evidence was laid out methodically. Lily's testimony about the tea and the false bond, records of Karth's correspondence with an exiled sorcerer known for bond manipulation, witness accounts of his attack on Sable. It took 3 hours. In the end, the verdict was unanimous. Exile, not death. Kael had argued against that, wanting justice but not vengeance, but permanent banishment from Packlands. Karth would be stripped of his title, his rank, his connection to the pack he'd served for 40 years. He would die alone, as he'd forced Kyle's father to do, as he'd tried to force Sable to do. When the sentence was read, Karth laughed. You think this is over? He called out, his voice echoing across the chamber. You think exiling me changes anything? The pack knows the truth now. They know your father tried to force a bond. They know you're just like him, obsessed, blinded, willing to do anything to claim what you think is yours. You're wrong, Kael said calmly. He stood at the front of the chamber, Sable at his side, his hand in hers. My father was obsessed. He tried to manipulate a bond that didn't exist, but I didn't have to, because Sable and I... He turned to look at her, his eyes warm. We were always meant to be. The bond pulsed between them, visible, undeniable. The pack saw it, felt it, and Karth's expression finally cracked. Get him out of here, Marcus ordered. Guards hauled Karth away, his voice rising in a final, furious shout that dissolved into the night. Sable watched him go and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just relief. It was over. 6 months later. Sable stood on the terrace overlooking the valley, one hand pressed against the swell of her belly, 7 months now, unmistakable and beautiful, the other holding a mug of tea that had gone cold. The pack had adjusted, slowly. Some wolves still whispered, still questioned, but most had accepted the truth that their alpha's mate was pregnant with another wolf's child, and that their alpha loved her, and the baby, anyway. It had been hard. Goddess, it had been hard. Sable had endured stares and judgment and more than a few cruel comments, but Kael had been there. Every step, every moment, defending her, protecting her, loving her so fiercely that eventually even the harshest critics had fallen silent. Footsteps sounded behind her. Kael appeared, sliding his arms around her waist,
his hand settling over hers on her belly. "You should be resting," he murmured against her ear. "I'm fine. You're always fine." Kale's hand pressed gently against a spot where the baby was kicking. "But humor me anyway." Sable smiled, turned in his arms. "How was patrol?" "Quiet, boring, the way I like it." Kale's expression softened as he looked down at her belly. "Any movement today?" "Constantly. I think this one's going to be a fighter." "Good." Kale's hand moved in slow circles. "They'll need to be, growing up with you as their mother." Sable swatted his arm. "Rude." "True," Kale countered. He leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth. "I love you." "I know." Sable's hand slid up his chest. "I love you too." The bond hummed between them, warm and constant and absolutely certain. In 2 months, the baby would be born, and they'd face whatever came next, together, just like they'd promised. Kale's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and frowned. "What?" Sable asked. "Bren," Kyle held up the message. "He's asking if he can visit, when the baby's born, to meet them." Sable's chest tightened. They'd barely spoken to Bren since that day in the sitting room. He'd kept his distance, respected their boundaries, stayed silent even when the pack whispered about him. "What do you think?" she asked. Kale was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think it's your choice. But if you ask me—" He paused. "I think the baby deserves to know where they came from, even if it's complicated, even if it hurts." Sable nodded slowly. "Okay, tell him yes, but on our terms, our timing." Kale typed a response, sent it, then pocketed his phone and pulled Sable back against him. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said. "I'm terrified," Sable admitted, "of being a mother, of screwing this up, of—" "You won't." Kale's voice was absolute. "You're the strongest person I know, and you're going to be an amazing mother." "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching you for 7 years." Kyle smiled. "And I've never been wrong about you yet." Sable's eyes burned. She pressed her face into his chest, breathing him in, pine and smoke and home. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Always," Kyle said. And he meant it. Boom. The baby was born on a storm-soaked night in late spring. Labor came fast and brutal, pulling Sable under waves of pain that made her scream and curse and beg for it to be over. Kyle stayed beside her the entire time, his hand locked in hers, his voice a steady anchor as the world narrowed to nothing but blood and agony and the desperate primal need to push. When it was finally over, when the midwife placed the tiny screaming bundle on Sable's chest, the world stopped. "It's a girl," the midwife said, smiling. Sable stared down at the baby, at the dark hair plastered to her tiny skull, at the scrunched-up face, at the perfect, furious little fists waving in the air. "Hi," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Hi, sweetheart." The baby's crying quieted. Her eyes, dark blue, unfocused, turned toward Sable's voice, and Sable fell in love. Completely. Irrevocably. Kyle leaned over her shoulder, his hand gentle on the baby's head. "She's perfect," he said hoarsely. "She is." Sable looked up at him, tears streaming. "She's ours." "Ours," Kale agreed. He pressed a kiss to Sable's temple, then, carefully, to the baby's forehead. The bond pulsed, not between Sable and Kyle this time, but between all 3 of them, a family, broken and stitched together from pieces that didn't fit, but whole anyway, perfect anyway. 2 weeks later, Bren came to visit. Sable sat in the nursery, the baby asleep in her arms, when Kyle showed him in. Bren stopped in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He looked older, tired, but steady. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." Sable shifted, adjusting the blanket around the baby's face. "You want to meet her?" Bren's throat worked. He crossed the room slowly, sank into the chair across from Sable, and looked down at the sleeping infant. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then so softly, Sable almost didn't hear it. "She's beautiful." "She is." Sable's hand stroked the baby's hair. "We named her Ember." "Ember," Bren repeated. His eyes were wet. "That's perfect." Sable watched him carefully, saw the grief and regret and love warring across his face. "Do you want to hold her?" she asked. Bren's head snapped up. Are you sure?" Sable looked at Kyle, who stood in the doorway, his arms crossed. He nodded once. "I'm sure," Sable said. She stood carefully, crossed to Bren, and placed Ember in his arms. Bren held her like she might shatter. His hands trembled, his breath caught. "Hi, Ember," he whispered. His voice broke. "I'm your biological father, but I won't be your dad. That's Kyle. He's the one who'll teach you to be strong and brave and good, but He stopped, tears streaming. "I'll love you anyway, even from a distance, I promise." Sable's chest ached. Ember stirred in Bren's arms. Her tiny hand curled around his finger, and Bren broke. He cried silently, his shoulders shaking, his face pressed against the baby's head. Kale moved into the room, his hand settling on Sable's shoulder. They stood there together. The four of them, broken and healing and figuring it out one moment at a time. After a while, Bren handed Ember back to Sable. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for letting me meet her, for not shutting me out completely." "She deserves to know you," Sable said. "When she's older, when she can understand, we'll tell her the truth." "All of it?" "All of it." Sable's voice was firm. "The good and the bad. And we'll let her decide what relationship she wants with you." Bren nodded. "That's more than I deserve." "Maybe," Kale said, "but it's what's best for her, and that's what matters." Bren stood, moved toward the door, paused. "Be happy," he said, without turning back. "Both of you. You deserve it." He left. Sable looked down at Ember, her heart full to breaking. "We will be," she whispered. 3 years later. Sable stood in the kitchen, flour dusting her hands, while Ember, 3 now, dark-haired and bright-eyed and utterly fearless, stood on a stool beside her, helping mix cookie dough. "Mama, can I lick the spoon?" Ember asked, her voice high and earnest. "After we're done mixing," Sable said, smiling. "But I want to lick it now." "Patience, little wolf," Ember pouted. Then, with the lightning-fast reflexes she'd inherited from both her parents, she snatched the spoon and ran. "Ember Ardent Thornridge," Sable called after her, laughing. "Get back here!" Ember's shriek of delight echoed through the house. Kyle appeared in the doorway, Ember dangling upside down over his shoulder, the spoon still clutched in her fist. "I caught a thief," he announced. "I not a thief," Ember protested. "I a cookie monster." "My mistake." Kale flipped her upright, settling her on his hip. "What do we do with cookie monsters?" "Tickle them," Ember shouted. Kale's fingers dug into her sides, and Ember dissolved into giggles, the spoon forgotten. Sable watched them, her chest warm. This was what she'd fought for, what they'd all fought for. Not perfection, not some fairy tale ending, but this. A family built on choice and love and the stubborn refusal to let the past define them. Kale caught her eye over Ember's head, smiled, and Sable smiled back. Later, after the cookies were baked and Ember was asleep, Sable and Kyle stood on the terrace overlooking the valley, the same spot where Karth had tried to destroy them, where everything had almost ended. But they'd survived, and they'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. "You ever regret it?" Kyle asked quietly. "Choosing me? This life?" "Never," Sable said. She turned in his arms, her hands framing his face. "You?" "Not once." Kale's eyes burned silver in the moonlight. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Ember, my girls." "Your girls," Sable echoed. She kissed him, soft, sure, full of years and promises, and a love that had survived everything fate and manipulation and their own mistakes could throw at it. The bond hummed between them. Warm, constant, real. When they finally pulled apart, Kyle's forehead rested against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "I know," Sable said. "I've always known." And beneath the moon that had witnessed their bond, their trial, their battle, they stood together, alpha and mate, broken and healed, forever.